Hi, good morning. Is that Michael or Lesley? Are you there?
I'm here and I'm saying good morning to you, Sheila.
Hi, Michael.
I'll mute myself.
Today I was not sent a link.
What?
Okay, Sheila, can you see me?
No.
Yes, there you are.
Okay, I'm on,
Hi.
Jill. Thank you. All right, bye. I couldn't get on this morning.
Oh,
I mean, I couldn't get on now. So, phew, here I am. Okay, so I need to look at this thing, not up there. which is not easy because it's so small. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
I'm trying not to freak out because I just had this 10-minute technical issue where it just
Morning.
wouldn't. Michael, could you mute yourself? Good morning.
I was
It
muted. It told me to mute myself, but now I'm
I,
muted.
okay.
Okay, so woo, calm down.
So,
Anyway, I got on. Here I am. I was not emailed the link for this class. I've been
Oh.
emailed for every class, but not this one. And the only
Okay.
link I had made me an attendee, which would
Yeah, I
not
saw
work.
you. Yeah, no, okay.
Anyway, I got on,
All right.
obviously.
So Lesley, I'm looking at the sharing portion of our control panel,
Yes.
and I have my microphone on, and I have my webcam on, and I have my screen on, and I've got show main screen, and we are recording. And so I think that's everything that we need to do, yes?
I hope so. Pamela figured out a little different way. And her way was to stop the automatic recording. So underneath above where it says, oh, have you started the broadcast already?
Yes.
Okay, then everybody can hear us. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, well, you've started it and I see it's recording and you chose your screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when you make me the presenter, I should get a message saying, do you want to show your screen? And I say yes, and then it should record that.
All right, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to make you the presenter.
Okay. That is the magic touch I've discovered, is the show my screen button up there.
Hold on, let's see. Okay. All right, so make you the presenter. Yes, okay.
Okay, so great. It didn't ask me, so that's okay. It's showing your screen, I think.
Do you have options open in your sharing section on the control panel?
I might interject here. I got the message to show my screen, so I think maybe you made the wrong Michael Tierra, the presenter.
Quite
Yeah, we're
possible.
both under Michael Tierra.
Yeah. Okay, let me change it back.
Michael too.
All right, so I changed it back to myself. Okay, yeah, it's a little bit tricky because all three of us are listed as Michael Tierra.
Right.
And Lesley, I think it shows you as Michael Tierra panelist.
Yes, try that one.
There you go. Okay.
It didn't ask me again. Did it ask you, Michael? He's probably a panelist also. Were there two panelists?
Just one panelist, but two organizers. And I'm one of the organizers.
Okay, so I'll run over and ask him if he got it. He's not saying anything, but I'll be right back.
All right.
Okay, so I logged him off, and
Okay.
because it was sent to him. So if you could take back the presenter and then give it to me, there should only be 2 Michaels on there now.
Alrighty.
Good morning, everybody. Hang in there with us. We're almost there. Every day seems to be a new and interesting stepping stone. Yes.
All right.
Share my screen.
Aha, there's your screen. All right.
Okay. And why am I not on the screen I want to be on? Here we go. Okay. So you all can see me, I assume. Sheila?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. So Sheila, any announcements, anything you want to start off with?
Just want to double check on your control panel, Lesley, and make sure that you've got recording for webcam and screen. Yeah?
My sharing, my screen is showing. Yes. And it's
Okay.
recording.
Okay, then I think we're all set. I don't think I have any particular announcements. I would just like to remind everybody that since we're in a webinar format and we're sitting at our desks and staring at our screens for hours at a time, to remind yourself to breathe as we go along and take care of your body. That's it.
Really great reminders. Thank you so much, Sheila. All right. Well, here we are. Gosh, we've had 3 full days already. We have another 5 to go, believe it or not. And what a packed weekend. Woo. So today and this week, we're really launching into the course material, particularly in terms of theory. We want to make sure that the theoretical foundation is laid and strong, because this is the springboard for jumping into using herbs. And as I discussed on Friday morning, the energy of herbs is really important, because somebody could have a cold or flu like I did. I took the wrong herb, I took a hot herb, and I had a hot energy illness, so it made me far worse. When we choose the right energy herb for whatever condition is going on, then we get very efficient and effective results, as much as is possible for that situation. So that's why sometimes people try herbs and they don't work for them, because they're not taking the right herb for them. The commercialization of herbs has done wonderful things for bringing herbalism to the forefront, making herbs much more widely available for everyone. It's terrific. But frankly, in order to sell something, you have to really zoom in on one particular item to advertise. And so the downside of that is most people are getting to know only one aspect of an herb, one use of an herb. So if you hear about echinacea these days, a lot of times you think it's for what? Colds and flus, right? Echinacea is really it has much more valuable uses than that. It's an antitoxin herb and has been long used for snake bites and toxic sepsis conditions and so forth. So we don't want to lose these uses of herbs. And it's starting to happen. Not only that, for instance, turmeric. That is the hot herb of this last year. A lot of people are saying you have inflammation, and everybody has inflammation, right? So take turmeric. But turmeric is very cooling and drying. And so for people who have conditions of cold and or dryness in their bodies, it makes them worse. I actually get people coming in clinically to see me who have symptoms that have been caused by taking too much turmeric. It just was not right for their bodies. So the same thing can happen with all herbs. And the upshot of this is we don't need to make herbalism the purview and realm of just practitioners. No, we all need to learn just some basic energetics and really be advertising herbs more as this is a cooling herb and a drying herb. If you don't have coldness and dryness, don't take this herb. I know that's asking too much. Anyway, so we really are going to get in this morning. We're going to cover TCM fundamentals, fundamental properties, and more than that. Tomorrow you're going to have Ayurveda, introduction to Ayurveda, which is the ancient medicine of India. It's a fantastic medicine. A lot of you have already studied it. Many of you are already prone to that medicine, and that's great. Some of you will feel more connected with Ayurveda than others of you with traditional Chinese medicine, and others of you may have more energetic systems that you're interested in. There's lots of them, and there's many ancient ones. And of course, the Greek humor system was the basis of herbalism in the Western path centuries ago. And of course, there's Native American energetic systems, there's African, there's Egyptian, Unani Tib, Tibetan, and so forth and so on. So all I'm saying is learn an energetic system for using herbs and apply it to whatever herbs you're using. This is one of the benefits, is it doesn't matter where you're living or what herb you're using from what part of the world. You can apply these principles to those herbs and then know what is best for you once we go through these fundamental properties. Okay, so there are just a couple more things I want to tell you. Oh, yes. So while you're learning all this, and especially today, a lot of this may sound Greek to you, and I really should say Chinese to you, because that's the basis we're going on today, the fundamental principles. So just hang in there. You will get it. By the week's end, you will get it. Today, it might just seem, oh my gosh, why am I trying to even learn this? Now, almost all of you are students of the course, but not all of you have gotten through the first set of lessons. No problem there. All of this is, we go into in detail in the lessons. It starts with lesson 4 for Ayurveda, 5, 6, 7, and maybe 8, but definitely 5, 6, and 7 get into the fundamental aspects of traditional Chinese medicine. So you can go to those books to look things up. And talking about books, there's many great books that deal with these principles. The simplest one, and it's not because it's my book, but because I tried to make it very fundamental and break it down, is my Healing with the Herbs of Life. So I have all the patterns in here that we're going to go over. I have treating specific conditions and the possible patterns that are there. The fundamental properties we're going to cover today, all of that. So my goal is to demystify Chinese medicine, and that's my that's what I've tried to do in that book, and that's what I'd love to have happen for you this week. There's also these orange books, very orange books, as you can see. Chinese Traditional Herbal Medicine. There's volume 1 and volume 2. Michael and I wrote together. So volume 1 goes over all the theory. And you'll find more in-depth information on everything we're covering this week in here. And then one of my very favorites, and is used a lot in acupuncture school, are the books by Macchiocia and Giovanni Macchiocia. So this one is the Fundamentals of Chinese Medicine. And I highly recommend this if you really want to dig in more deeply. He has all kinds of books. There's this one, and then he's got the treatment of specific diseases, and he's got one only on gynecology, and so forth. So his material is translated from Chinese and very good, very understandable and graspable and so forth. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. I want to just briefly tell you what we're going to do is cover, there's the energy of herbs and healing, basically. So today I'm going to go over the causes of disease, the energy of disease in the TCM Fundamentals, TCM Physiology and Biorhythms, if you will, and 8 Principles, which puts it together. Wednesday morning, you're going to have 5 elements. And that's another aspect of TCM theory. And then Thursday morning, we're going to put it all together. So what I covered today builds the foundation blocks, or the individual building blocks, if you will, of creating the structure of an assessment, of a diagnosis for what's going on in somebody. We'll learn the last pieces of that Thursday morning in terms of the organs. In Chinese medicine Friday, we're going to learn the very last pieces, put it all together, and show you how you use it in cases. So that's our outline for the whole week of the morning classes, and let's get going. Okay, so I've already talked about, I'm going to make that smaller for myself. Sorry. We basically covered this. Traditional Western medicine, as I said, was the Greek humor system, and that eventually was co-opted, disbanded. Then we have Western medicine that started making its way to the fore, which breaks everything down into its biochemical constituents. Everything is seen as discrete, if you will. Chinese medicine sees everything together, united, interacting, interrelating, completely opposite perspective. So in traditional Chinese medicine, we treat the person who has the disease, whereas Western medicine treats the disease. They're looking for whatever the vaccine is, or the pill, the medication that will take care of diabetes, no matter who has diabetes. Instead, in traditional Chinese medicine, we're seeing one person with diabetes and seeing that they need one particular approach, whereas somebody else who has it needs a different approach. And the different approach means different herbs for each of them. It's not the same remedy. For instance, headaches, there's probably 6, 7 different approaches for headaches. Insomnia has at least 5 or 6. Depression can have several different causes. And so our herbal choices vary accordingly. This is really important that we're treating the person, because it also brings in the whole body, mind, spirit complex. We're not just looking at whatever virus or whatever is in the DNA chain or whatever that is off and causing the problem. Instead, we're looking at everything in the person and how to work with that. So we're in this situation, we're looking at imbalances in someone and what the imbalance is, and bringing the person back to balance as much as possible. My yogic teacher always said you can't be absolutely imbalanced, because if you are, then all the elements separate and you and the body goes back to the earth, which of course we're not in the body anymore at that point. So you come back to as close a balance as you can, which is what we call health. All right, and then herbs work when you have the diagnosis right. That's exactly what I've been saying. Okay, so the fundamentals we're covering are causes of disease, the major 5 fundamental properties, yin and yang, a system called the 8 Principles, which puts these things together. Then TCM Physiology and Biorhythms, 5 elements, the organs, and then putting it all together with cases. Okay, so the causes of disease, you can see these up here on your screen right now. And as you can see, there are several causes. Now, the pernicious influences are external causes that can invade the body. And colds and flus, as we know, we call them invasions, wind heat or wind chill invasions. So wind, first of all, is a factor that unites with either coldness, heat, or dampness. And it blows, if you will, the influence into the body. It loves to do this particularly at the back of the neck, the nape of the neck, and the back of the head, which is one reason in Chinese medicine why they cover the neck with high collars or scarves. And that's a very important place to protect the body, as is the midriff, both in the front and the back, because that's another place that conditions can invade and the wind can carry it in. So, symptoms of wind are things like the quality of wind itself outside. It comes and it goes. It blows strongly. It fades away. It's fluky. It changes direction. It changes severity. That's the quality of wind. So a lot of symptoms may come and go, change direction, change severity, change location, change the ability, nature of wind. Excuse me. So symptoms of wind externally or on the surface of the body would be things like allergies, sneezing, itching, itchy skin. You can get cold and flu, sinus infections. Wind can block things in the nose, stuffy nose. Wind can also be inside the body and arise internally, but we'll talk about that a little later. So for right now, we're talking about the pernicious influence, sometimes called the six evils, where they are driving into the body and causing a condition. So if you have it blowing into the body, wind, you want to use herbs that take it out of the surface of the body. And those would be typically our diaphoretics because they open the surface, which releases whatever is trying to invade there. Okay, cold and heat. I'm going to go to this next chart to show you cold and heat. These are sort of obvious, and yet we don't pay that much attention to them. So this is really important. There are two main factors that you right away want to get to know. And these can come in externally, they can enter the body, or internally, they can arise and grow. But either one of them will cause diseases. So heat signs, as you can imagine, when you're hot, think about a really hot summer day. Even some of you are living in 0-degree weather right now. Think about a really hot day and how you feel. You sweat easily. You're throwing your clothes off. You don't want to wear as much. You're thirsty. You might even be craving cool things to drink. You're restless. People who sit there and they shake their leg a lot. That's a restlessness, that's a heat symptom. Burning sensation. Blood in any discharges indicates heat. And any excretions, secretions that are yellow indicate heat as well. In fact, when you start getting dryness from that, so for instance, you can have a cough that you can't expectorate any sputum because of the heat drying the fluids, and so they can't be expectorated. The person tends to have a red face, and now I'm talking about a whole red face and possibly red neck at the same time. There's a reason for that phrase, is too much heat. And somebody who has too much heat tends to be more aggressive, outgoing, loud, talkative, very strong body odors, strong behind all the senses, strong appetite, like I said, loud voice, sweats really easily and a lot, tends toward fever rather than body chills, and the tongue body is red, the coat is yellow, and the pulse is fast. So tongue and pulse I'll mention right now. You have both of those as pre-recorded webinars available to you. I believe those links have already been sent out, and you're about to get the links to all the tests. I really, really recommend highly that you do the tongue and pulse pre-recorded webinars before Thursday. If you have those under your belt, then what we cover on Thursday and Friday will make so much more sense to you and put it all together. So if at all possible, do that. Now, cold signs. Okay, you in hot climates are going to like this. You in cold climates probably recognize these. So if you have coldness, you're not thirsty, you're not sweaty. In fact, in summertime, you might be wearing a lot of clothes and not want to take off a sweater. Where somebody who's hot, I've even seen in the winter time wearing shorts. So you know they have heat. In the summer, if you're wearing sweaters, you are colder. You have more coldness. So any excretions, discharges tend to be copious and runny and clear to white in color. Circulation tends to be poor because coldness slows things down. Just like think about water turning into ice. It slows things down and can even impede circulation at that point. Extremities tend to be cold, and then of course the whole body can be cold, or parts of the body can feel cold. More dull, achy pains instead of burning sensations, which is what heat has, tends more toward low blood pressure. When you have coldness and things aren't circulating as well, then they pool. So fluids in the body can pool and create dampness, or if they even congeal from there, phlegm. Diarrhea, loose stools versus constipation for heat. This person, instead of being outgoing or aggressive, they tend to be hypoactive. They tend to be withdrawn, maybe even sitting curled like this because they're reducing their body surface area in order to retain whatever body heat they have. They might feel chills a lot. They're slow in whatever they do. They want to sleep a lot. The tongue body itself is pale, might even be a little swollen, definitely somewhat moist or white colored, white coated, and the pulse is slow as well and tends to be deep. So those are the difference between heat and cold. Now, if you have wind and cold coming into the body, you're going to have these, maybe sneezing, coughing, runny eyes, but the person's going to have very strong chills, low fever, stronger body ache. No matter what covers and clothes they put on, they can't get warm enough. They don't have a thirst. They don't have an appetite. These people need diaphoretics that dispel what we call dispel wind chill or dispel wind cold. So they're the warming diaphoretics. Fresh ginger is perfect in this case, as an example. Now, somebody who has wind heat combined blowing in externally, they're going to be the opposite. They're going to have a higher fever, very little or lesser body aches. They still might have the sneezing, the runny nose, the itching, but the runny nose will be more like yellow clumps of phlegm. They'll be sweating really easily, throwing their clothes off. They don't want many clothes on. They're thirsty. They want to drink all the time. Restless, moving around, probably quite irritable. So these folks need diaphoretics with a cooling energy. Lemon balm is an example here, or the mints in general. They're great diaphoretics that are cooling, that release the heat, clear the heat, and help push out the invading influence. Okay, now we also have dampness. I've touched on this a little bit, but dampness can invade the body, actually, and it creates a heavy sensation. That's one of the major qualities of dampness. I actually have clients who come in and say, my head feels heavy, or my chest feels heavy, or my arms and legs feel heavy. And I know right away that they have dampness. And sure enough, it pans out. So somebody with dampness is going to have copious excretions, secretions. A lot of them, if they're coughing, for instance, they have just, not only are they coughing a lot, but they have lots of runny fluid coming out of the lungs. Dampness also likes to sink, so it can go into the lower part of the body and create blockages there. Edema is a sign of dampness. Dampness tends to collect in and around the organs, so we'll see when we cover the organs how that appears in particular situations. Now, wind and dampness both don't appear by themselves. So just like wind appears with cold or heat, dampness also appears with cold or heat. So you have damp cold or damp heat. And they will have, the dampness itself will have symptoms of heat if it's damp heat. In other words, excretions, secretions will be copious because of the dampness, but they'll be yellow. So think of dysentery, yellowy diarrhea. That would be a damp heat condition. Certain types of bladder infections are a damp heat condition. Jaundice would be damp heat. You can even see it on the skin, that yellowish complexion. So cold damp or damp cold is the opposite. It's dampness with coldness. And because there's coldness, you're going to have more runny secretions, excretions. You'd have the diarrhea that's clear and watery. You might have a lot of sputum coming up, but it's white or clear colored. So that's how damp cold will appear. And again, when we cover the organs, you'll see many more ways that could be. Phlegm is dampness that is congealed. And usually it's heat that congeals the dampness. And so phlegm, there's two kinds of phlegm. There's substantial phlegm and insubstantial phlegm. And substantial is the phlegm you can see, touch, taste. You might not want to, but it's coming out of our bodies. And it can collect under the skin as nodules. Cysts can collect in the body in the same way as masses and cysts. It can collect along the meridians in the vessels. And then the insubstantial is phlegm that you can't touch or see, but it's affecting the function and flow in the organs. So we're going to see with one pattern, it can block the functionality of the heart and create incoherent behavior, as one example. It can be in the meridians, and so the flow of energy is not smooth and proper and so forth, but you can't see it, you can't touch it, you don't know it's there, there's no nodule to press on. So those are some examples of that. You probably want to hear about dryness, right? After the dampness, let's go the other way. So dryness is a condition of, imagine you're on the desert, in the desert, and how quickly that dry air dries out your skin. So dryness would have symptoms of dry eyes, dry nails, dry lips, dry skin, dry mouth, dry hair. Everything's dry. And usually there's heat behind this causing the dryness. But so dryness, we want to use moistening herbs. And it can invade. It can be a sudden invasion with this. Just like summer heat is a very acute summer invasion. And if anybody has ever been outside on a really hot day, and all of a sudden feel like you could collapse, that is summer heat. It's almost like heat exhaustion. So you might have a lot of sudden, acute, profuse sweating, thirst. You can even start getting spots in your visual field. It could go into dizziness, and you want to be cautious here because it could go into heat exhaustion. It goes into, oh my gosh, why am I not thinking of the word? You all are thinking about it. Heat stroke. Okay, could go into heat stroke. Don't touch my keyboard. I got that. And heat stroke can be very dangerous because it can, of course, lead to death. So that's what summer heat is like. And guess what herbs treat summer heat? Really cold, moistening herbs like watermelon. So some of you who eat watermelon or drink watermelon juice in the winter may not be a smart idea because the winter is a cooler time of year. You could be creating a lot of coldness in your body. Okay, there's another category called deficient heat, but we're going to get into that when we talk about yin. So let's move on. 7 emotions. So Chinese medicine absolutely, like I said, recognizes the whole body, mind, spirit complex. Emotions imbalanced can absolutely cause illness. But if somebody has an illness, they could more easily show a particular emotion. So you can use this diagnostically. Not only does it cause illness, but it also is a diagnostic principle. So in my intake form, for instance, I always ask people, what are your predominant emotions? And that automatically points me to particular organs that may well be imbalanced for them. And 9 times out of 10, it confirms what I'm already seeing in somebody. So you can read about these individual emotions. When you get to 5 elements, you'll see the correspondences with them. But what I want to explain about joy here is that joy in itself is not an imbalanced emotion. It's excessive joy. It's somebody who is jumping on the tabletops dancing. It's somebody who's laughing a lot, particularly if they're laughing inappropriately. And so that's the kind of inappropriate joy is what we really mean here. Okay, so lifestyle factors absolutely can create disease. As we know, diet, poor diet, and diet is not the same for everyone. Just like the same herb doesn't work for everyone, the same food doesn't work for everyone. And lesson 2 in your herb course goes very thoroughly into this. And as well, we have a pre-recorded webinar for you about a balanced diet too. So just remember, a balanced diet is not one diet for everyone. It is what works for you at this point in your life, because even that can change for you depending on what's happening in your life. Exercise. You can under-exercise. Many people know about that, but you can also over-exercise. So for instance, excessive weightlifting can injure the kidneys, the kidney adrenals. So all of this is about doing it in balance for your body and your body's ability. Overexertion means overworking. Overexerting yourself, I like the excessive weightlifting, but overworking is a big one in our culture. Here in Japan, I'll tell you, although I think they take the cake, but we're getting there. And it's really possible and happens a lot when people overwork. I talked to one woman who, her boss would call her at 3 o'clock in the morning and be furious if she wouldn't answer the phone. And some of you may already have that experience. And some of you have gone through medical training. You know how you are pushed when you're going through that in the hospital. So now, excessive sex, that also can deplete the body, depletes the kidney adrenals, too much for your body's capacity. So we all have a certain inherited amount of energy called essence we're going to talk about. And depending on how much you inherited, that dictates your capacity, but also the Chinese have delineated it according to age. So of course, the younger you are, then the more sex your body can get away with, if you will. And the older you are, there's a natural decline that they say to follow. So if you want to look that up, Google it, and you can get guidelines for yourself there. And inadequate rest, again, not getting enough rest depletes the kidney adrenals. That's there have been different schools of thought throughout the ages, and there was a heart school where all diseases and ailments in the body were caused by heart imbalances. And then we were in a spleen school where all ailments were caused by an imbalance in the spleen stomach, which is the digestion in the body. And Ayurveda is very much based on that. Now we've been in a kidney school. So all disease is caused by an imbalance in the kidney adrenals because it's the root of yin and yang in the body and many other things. So at any rate, there are also miscellaneous causes of disease, and these include inherited factors, parasites, malnutrition, trauma, childbirth. And by childbirth, what is meant is birthing too many children for your body's capacity. So again, depending on your inherited energy, conceiving, carrying, and birthing a child takes a lot of kidney adrenal energy. If you have strong inherited energy, no problem. If you have weak inherited energy, you'll start experiencing problems maybe as early as not being able to conceive, or you can conceive and you have problems while you're carrying the child, or after childbirth, problems come on. I just had a patient last week who, and it happens a lot, but this particular patient, all her problems started after she birthed children. It's because it really takes that kidney adrenal energy out of the body. So recreational drugs, as we know, we learned a lot about that yesterday, medications, and old age. Can't help the old age if we get there. but we can keep our bodies strong and in balance so that we experience a better quality of life as we age. Okay, fundamental properties in the body. I want to cover these and then I'll take questions. So qi is qi, blood, fluids, essence, shen. These are 5 very important fundamental properties in the body, and I'm going to get into each of these in detail. So qi is very interesting. When we talk about qi, we tend to think of it in terms of energy. Do I have it or do I not have it? But qi has so many more functions, and it's actually immaterial as well as material. So the character for qi indicates both vapor and rice. So you've got the physical rice, but you've got the vapor, the immaterial aspect from it. It's a really great way to encompass the whole thing. So it's formless, it's invisible, so you can't touch it, difficult to measure, but you can experience it for sure, and you can observe it. So qi gives movement and heat to life. And but it's different things in different situations. The main thing to remember right now are the functions of qi. Qi holds, so it holds the blood in the vessels, it holds the organs in place, it holds the urine in, it holds the stool in. It also raises, it lifts up, and that's part of that, you know, holding the organs in place and so forth. But also it works emotionally that way. So it lifts the mood as well, if you will. Qi protects. If you look down at the forms of qi down here, you'll see the last one, defensive qi, called wei qi. A lot of people use that term. So it protects the body from those invading influences, those evils we talked about, the pernicious influences. So you've got a protective energy, that the wei qi, that is in right under the skin. And it keeps the pores closed or opens them when needed and helps protect the body. Qi also transports. So we're eating, we're drinking all the time. We've got, and transforms, qi transforms. So we're eating and drinking all the time. It needs to be transformed into usable blood and fluids and energy, right? So that happens in the body. Then it needs to be carried different places. So the cells get the nutrients, they get nourished. Every part of the body gets what it needs. So qi is the transporting function of carrying everything around the body. And qi, like everything I'm going to talk about here, has a cellular function on out. So it's not just this separate entity that's doing these things. It's everywhere. It's in the mitochondria. It's in, every aspect of the cell and between everything in the body and the surface and so forth. So here's just the different forms of qi, their Chinese pinyin names. You may see these. I'm not going to go into them, but you can read about them in depth in the books I showed you. Okay, qi imbalances are going to be based on what we see here, on the holding function, the raising function, transforming, transporting, protecting, and warming functions. So qi deficiency means you're going to have a lack of qi function somewhere. It's a depletion of it, a weakness of it. There's not enough of it. So it can't perform its functions. It won't show up in all of these functions being depleted, but one of them or a couple of them. So if you see symptoms of signs of somebody with, yes, it can affect the energy, low vitality, lethargy, that is potentially a qi deficiency. It can also be qi stagnation, we'll see in a minute. But shortness of breath, slow metabolism, frequent colds and flu with slow recovery, a low soft voice, spontaneous sweating, that's part of that holding function, isn't it? It's not holding the fluids in as they need to be held. Frequent urination, another holding function, prolapsed organs. The qi is not raising, lifting. Hemorrhoids, same thing, palpitations. So these are all signs of qi deficiency. There are more of them depending on the organ that we're discussing, and that's what we're going to cover on Thursday and Friday. This is just the basic composite, if you will, of qi deficiency. So what do you do when you want to tonify qi? If you have a deficiency, then you want to tonify. This is one of the categories that is really not well developed in Western herbalism. Tonics in Western herbalism tend to be herbs that are, in terms of the qi category, adaptogenic herbs. So a Luthro we could put in this category, to a certain extent rhodiola. Certainly we know about ginseng, and that's widely available now. Codonopsis is the poor man's ginseng, if you will. Astragalus, everybody knows about astragalus now. Not only does astragalus tonify qi, it also tonifies wei qi, that defensive qi. So it's really good for people who get frequent colds and flus or who are trying not to get them. Jujube dates, the red jujube dates, grow a lot on our continent. So those are wonderful for building not only qi, but blood as well. And Dioscorea, Chinese wild yam in this case. Now, as I mentioned before, briefly, we can have qi stagnation. This is another imbalance. This is where the qi is getting stuck, and it's either flowing improperly or not flowing well at all, or congesting in a particular direction. So this, when qi stagnates, it's very much like rush hour traffic, stopping and starting. You zip over to another lane, and then because it's moving, and then it stops. And people honk their horn, they stop honking their horn. So there's that kind of coming and going aspect, similar to wind, where the pains come and go, they change location, change severity. It's that little kind of spark of pain that you might have somewhere, and then somewhere else you get that spark of pain. That's a qi stagnation pain. You can have distension in the ribs and abdomen. Depression and mood swings very often come under this category. And so using herbs that move and smooth the qi can help take care of depression and get off antidepressants. I've seen that many, many times. Not severe depression, but feel. And if you use herbs that move this qi stagnation, they can go away fairly quickly. Somebody might sigh frequently. That's a qi stagnation. Irregular menses, and it's irregular both in flow and in its cycle. So it could be either way or both. That would be irregular. Burping, belching, hiccuping, vomiting, nausea. That's all the qi going the wrong direction. It's going up instead of down. When we eat, we want things to go down, right? So all of this is that way, as well as the shallow, non-productive cough can be qi stagnation. So that kind of cough, where it's because the person's really not getting a deep breath. The air's not going down. The qi's not pulling it down. So we use herbs that regulate qi. There's a category in the Materia Medica called regulate qi, herbs that regulate qi. And here are some carminatives go in this category. Cumin, orange peel, or tangerine peel is even better. Mint actually regulates qi. Cyperus and blueplum is a famous Chinese herb that regulates qi. The last category of qi imbalances are rebellious qi. This is when qi is strongly going in the wrong direction. So vomiting, nausea, hiccuping. And a lot of the same herbs are used, but they're a little stronger. So Aquilaria, for instance. Yes, tangerine peel, chives, persimmon calyx. A lot of these work really well for these qi imbalances. Okay, blood. Blood, similar to qi, is immaterial and material, but it's more of a dense immaterial and material form of qi. They're really interconnected and interlinked, qi and blood. Qi moves blood, but blood nourishes and moistens qi. So they work together. Blood comes from bone marrow and, of course, from the food and fluids we ingest. So the blood functions. The blood houses and anchors the mind, which is in the heart. And we'll really get into that on Thursday. But blood, as we know, nourishes everything in the body. It has so many moistening and nourishing functions. We've got to get blood into all the cells and organs and to the tendons and muscles and skin and so forth and so forth. It has a warming nature as well. So any blood imbalances we're going to see will have to do with these functions. Deficient blood, not enough blood. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, somebody who has deficient blood may or may not test as anemic. They're different things because remember, the blood functions are happening on a cellular level on out, including with all the organs. So they may test as fine, they don't have anemia, but they have signs of blood imbalances, blood deficiency. So here are the main symptoms: dizziness, blurry vision, numbness, restlessness. That numbness, sometimes you all, keep going. Restlessness, anxiety can be from deficient blood, slight irritability, insomnia. And this type of insomnia is somebody who wakes up and they have a very hard time going back to sleep. They fall asleep okay, they wake up and they have a very hard time falling asleep. That's deficient blood insomnia. There are other types. Scanty menses or amenorrhea, no menstruation at all. Dry skin, hair, and eyes. A lusterless pale face, so you could have pale face, pale lips, pale tongue, pale nails. A lot of you may know that technique of pressing on the nail for a few seconds, letting go, and the color should come back within a second. And if it doesn't, then you could have deficient blood, or the blood might not be getting there. So it could be a circulatory issue. There can be tiredness with deficient blood as well as deficient qi. So right away, if somebody says they're tired, we are looking at two different patterns, at least. There are others that we want to start checking further on. And I'll say this right here. When you're using these fundamental properties and trying to determine what's going on in somebody's body for the symptoms and signs they're experiencing, you want to have at least 3 or more symptom signs in one of these categories in order to determine that it is present. So again, if somebody says they're tired, it could be from qi deficiency, it could be from blood deficiency, it could be from qi stagnation, it could be from yin deficiency. We're going to cover all of these. But right away, there's at least 4, yang deficiency too. There's at least 5 different causes for tiredness. We're not going to automatically give a qi tonic and say, oh, you're deficient in qi. Instead, we're going to look further and see where do we have 3 or more signs or symptoms in which patterns to know that they're involved too. If the person has a pale face, dry skin and eyes, hair, blurry vision, we're looking at blood deficiency. Okay? They might also be easily startled or easily overwhelmed. And poor memory can go in this category. Particularly long-term poor memory. So here we want to use herbs that tonify blood. And this is, again, a place where the materia medica diverges greatly with the Chinese and the Western. In Western herbalism, when we tonify blood, we give herbs high in iron, like yellow dock or nettle or I think those are 2 of the main ones that are given. But yellow dock is bitter and it's cooling. And what's the nature of blood? The nature of blood is warming and moistening. So bitter is drying and it's cooling, so it's going to cool things more. So it actually can cause more blood deficiency. And I've seen this over and over clinically. Taking Western herbs to tonify blood actually can create a worsening of the deficient blood symptoms. The only way I've seen Western herbs work is if it's combined with molasses. Molasses, high in iron, warming, moistening. So it can give that blood tonification in the true way it's needed. And then you can use the iron from all of those other herbs, but you're not counteracting and drying out the blood or cooling the blood. So this is a very key place to pay attention. Instead, Dong Quai, a lot of us are very familiar with Dong Quai now in the West, and it's a great herb for building blood, the primary herb for building blood, really. Lychee berries, we know them as goji berries. It's a part of its pinyon name. It grows in this country, wolfberry. I've talked to people in many parts, the North and the South, the East and the West of the country, who do grow this plant. Cooked Rehmannia, white peony, and longanberries are another excellent food. In fact, an acupuncturist friend of mine said that after a long day at the clinic, she would always eat a handful of longanberries. And you could do this with the lychee or goji berries too, to replenish her blood from all the talking. And this is really excellent for teachers and salespeople as well. It uses a lot of heart blood, we'll see on Thursday, to teach, to talk constantly. Okay, so not only can we have deficient blood as an imbalance, but we can also get heat in the blood. And heat in the blood, it's almost like a volcanic eruption where the heat, we don't have the pressure here, but the heat makes it boil so strongly, this is metaphorically, that it's pushed out of the vessels. So you can have hemorrhage, you can have nosebleeds, all of a sudden excessive menstrual bleeding that won't stop, or any kind of bleeding that doesn't stop, potentially could be from excess heat in the blood. So you can have blood anywhere, sputum, stools, urine or vomit, coughing it up, nose, menses, like I said, or the skin eruptions can appear this way. We want to use herbs that regulate blood and stop bleeding in this case. We think of them as hemostatics, like yarrow, agrimony, but you can also use, a lot of people know tianqi ginseng, sanqi. Tianqi is its commercial name, so sanqi not only moves the blood, it stops bleeding. But it's gotten pretty hard to find and very expensive. So go for these others. Cattail pollen is a great one, and it's used quite widely. So I used to live in Ohio. We had cattail pollen growing right by us, and I wish I had known then. I would have harvested it. Okay, now here's a big pattern that we see a lot today, unfortunately, and that's blood stasis. This is stagnation of blood. So this occurs when the circulation is slowed or blocked for some reason. It could be stagnant qi. Remember, qi and blood are very interwoven. So if qi is not moving blood as it's supposed to, blood can stagnate. But also if you get too much coldness, which can invade or can arise internally from eating a cold diet, a lot of raw foods, a lot of cold ice drinks, a lot of smoothies, that creates coldness internally. And it slows that blood circulation down. It does what my Chinese teacher said, breaks the blood. So it can create all these symptoms as part of it. Of course, heat can stagnate the blood, and external injury, trauma. You know, the bruising you get on the skin, or even internal bleeding that can happen from injury, but bruising is what most of us are very used to. That's a type of blood stasis. So, and so are varicose veins. Symptoms: if you're having pain, it's a fixed in one location, stabbing and or boring pain. You know when you have blood stasis, it's very painful. It could be in the head. It could be menstrual pain, and you have it until you pass a clot. And the blood clots are blood stasis also. Certain types of hemorrhage are blood stasis. Hard, immobile masses and lumps have blood stasis as part of it. Remember I said the qi stagnation, you can have a movable and changeable lump or cyst. This one is immobile. Sorry, I just got a slow network connection on my screen, so let's get rid of that. I am connected to the, in a wired way, to the internet. So anyway, dark, even purplish discoloration indicate blood stasis. Could be on the tongue. It could be the sublingual veins under the tongue. It could be spots in different places on the tongue. It could be the whole tongue body looks slightly purplish. You could have different places in the complexion or on the skin that has that kind of dark purplish discoloration. Purple lips, nails, tongue, tremors, and swelling can all occur from blood stasis too. So in this case, Western herbalism uses amenagogues as the blood movers. Traditional Chinese medicine uses a materia medica category called herbs that regulate blood. So angelicas come under this category. Safflower, myrrh, boswellia comes under this category. Motherwort. And boswellia and myrrh are two fabulous, frankincense and myrrh, two fabulous herbs for very severe stabbing, localized pain. Anywhere in the body for the most part. Okay, fluids. Now, we not only have qi and blood, we have fluids. We have all kinds of fluids, and they're everywhere, and they're needed and necessary. So we have clear fluids, and we have what's called turbid fluids. So the clear fluids are light and watery and clear. They moisten the skin and the muscles and the tendons. And the heavy and dense ones, or the turbid ones, lubricate the joints, the spine, the bone marrow, the brain, the sensory organs, and so forth. In general, fluids moisten and nourish as well as protect. And fluids include everything but blood, basically. So you've got saliva, sweat, urine, tears, lymph, intracellular and cerebral spinal fluids, and all the bodily secretions we have. And they arise from what we eat and drink. So we need fluids. Like I said, they moisten and protect and lubricate. We want our joints lubricated so that we don't have bone on bone, which is extremely painful. We want the stomach lubricated so we don't have the hydrochloric acid doesn't burn the lining of the stomach. We need the lungs lubricated so the dry, harsh air doesn't dry out the lung tissue. We need the organs. Everything can be nicely lubricated so they slide and move as they need to, as we move. There is such a thing as too many fluids. Absolutely, we'll talk about that. But what I want to mention here is a lot of people used to believe, I don't know about anymore, but I know it was big in the 70s, a mucusless diet. So they wouldn't have any fluids in their body. And yes, most people today have way too much fluids, mainly because of their diet, from eating so many raw foods, smoothies every morning, ice drinks, raw foods, especially folks who love to study herbs are living more of an alternative lifestyle. We all tend to get more, what we call is dampness from the fluids, too many fluids, until we learn to balance our diet. So mucusless diets we don't want to follow because we need the protection and the moistening aspect of fluids. So what are imbalances? Okay, deficiency. Not enough fluids will show up as some dry symptoms, right? You could have dry, rough, chapped hands or cracked skin, dry throat, nose, mouth, or lips, dry stools, dehydration, unusual thirst. That's one of the big symptoms of dryness is unusual thirst, because some of these other symptoms could be deficient blood, or we'll see in a minute, deficient yin. So you might have a dry cough as well. And what we want to do here are use emulsants and emollients, herbs that, or herbs that tonify yin. So Irish moss, privet fruit, slippery elm, ophiopogon, marshmallow root, all of these help nourish yin. And excess fluids. As I said, this is called dampness. When we're talking about patterns, appears with heat or coldness. And this is just like the dampness I talked about with the pernicious influences, only it could be internal, not just external. So feelings of heaviness, loose stools, edema, any oozing skin eruptions. A lot of arthritis can have dampness, because arthritis in Chinese medicine is wind, dampness, and either cold or heat. So in whatever joints that you might be having pain, there's wind, dampness and either cold or heat. And you use herbs, there's actually a particular category of herbs that treats these all together. So we go automatically to those herbs, but you could choose herbs that treat dampness, that drain dampness, herbs that dispel wind, and herbs that warm coldness or cool heat. Clear heat, dispel coldness is typically how it's said. So heat, dampness, as I said, could come with heat or coldness. So you have damp heat, and we have great, our bitter tonics tend to be really great for this. Oregon grape, barberry, same, very similar herb, gentian, golden seal. These herbs all clear damp heat. Turmeric would go in this category. Yep, Oregon grape is a really great one, barberry, because it's gentle. It's very effective at clearing damp heat. When you see that yellow coat on the tongue, it's very effective at that, but it doesn't imbalance the blood or the yin. So it's good to know about those. Whereas gentian and golden seal particularly are very, very bitter and strong. So they're going to be stronger, and turmeric can be stronger too. We have another category of herbs called aromatic herbs that transform dampness. And these tend to be our digestive carminatives like cardamom and agastache, also known as patchouli, cloves, magnolia bark. These are fabulous for dampness in the digestive organs, the spleen and the stomach. So if somebody starts getting a feeling of meat clinging in their throat, or like there's phlegm stuck in their throat, one of these herbs is fabulous for that. Or if they're always coughing up phlegm or spitting up phlegm, or if they drool more easily day or night, these are herbs that are fantastic for that. Congealed fluids forms phlegm, as I described earlier, and phlegm is sticky. It has a downward, so it tends to move down. It's dirty. It can collect in the skin, channels, joints, lungs, or organs, so you may or may not see it. These are our cysts, our nodules, our tumors. Again, it's substantial or insubstantial. Insubstantial, it might create numbness, tremors, paralysis. So you don't see it, but all of a sudden there's a blockage. So Bell's palsy would come under this. Whiplash could come under this. Or you know how you wake up in the morning and, well, that's not really phlegm. Okay, I'm not going to say that. I'll say it another time. So it comes with heat or cold. And there's a category called herbs that dispel phlegm heat. And these are herbs that are cooling in energy, but also dissolve phlegm. And herbs that dispel cold phlegm are warming in energy, but dispel that phlegm. Essence. Okay, essence is highly refined. It's a fluid-like substance that's stored in the kidneys. The kidney adrenals are a unit in Chinese medicine. Chinese don't talk about adrenals, but they sit right on top of the kidneys. They have many similar functions in terms of Chinese medicine and their patterns. So we call it the kidney adrenal complex, basically. Essence is in charge of reproduction, growth, and maturation throughout life. It's the sexual power, the ability to conceive, to hold the pregnancy, to birth. It's the child growing and maturing appropriately and properly from age. It determines the constitutional strength of a being. It's like a trust fund that you inherit. So you can't, it's said that you cannot strengthen the essence, because it's something you're born with. You can supplement it by what you eat and drink and how well things function in your body. Now, there are some supposedly yogic techniques and even Qigong techniques that totally replenish the body. I've heard stories of, I don't know anybody directly, nor have I experienced, going into the caves in the Himalayas, following the specific regimes, having your teeth fall out and a third set of teeth grow in, having your hair fall out and new colored hair grow in. In other words, you are replenishing the body entirely. You're replenishing the essence. Many of us, most all of us will not know anybody who has done this. or if it even happens. I can't tell you for sure. I'm just saying these are stories students have brought up in class and said, I heard. So at any rate, this is our constitutional strength, and we want to guard our trust fund from childhood on, and we do that by proper diet, lifestyle habits for our body, and the 7 emotions and so forth, all those causes of disease we covered, for our body's ability. Some of us inherit large trust funds, and we can do anything. I used to say George Burns, but he's long gone. Who is, what's her name? The comic who's in her 90s. Betty White is a good example. She has good constitutional strength. She can still act, probably eat and drink anything she wants, do whatever she wants, and she's in her 90s. That's good constitutional energy. Other children are born with damaged essence, where they automatically have problems that happen from childhood on. Late growth fontanelle, late closure of the fontanelle, slow growing, maturing on all levels, mental, emotional, physical, or aging too quickly so that they actually die in their 20s. That is another irregular deficient essence condition. And as it says here, there's a pre-heaven essence, everything I've been talking about, and post-heaven essence, we supplement essence with food and drink. So essence imbalances, I was talking about the children, the late closure of the fontanelle, poor bone development, all of that. And what you do is you use herbs that tonify yin-yang, blood and qi together in order to strengthen essence. Now, I have worked with children who have had slow growth. I work with more than one, and at a distance actually. And you can, by tonifying the yin yang blood and qi for how it shows in their body, you can change the maturation process in them. So one example is a girl who was 8 when I first saw her, and she was still in diapers. She couldn't feed herself. She couldn't dress herself. She couldn't go to school. She could speak okay, but it was, sort of a baby language. So we started working with diet and herbs, and boom, her mother was shocked. She'd show up in the kitchen fully dressed on her own. She stopped needing to wear diapers. She started maturing mentally so she could go to school. And it was a special school, but still she could function in school and learn, and she's thriving. She's 14 now, so you really can nourish. What I mean by nourish is support post-heaven essence and shift some of these factors. In adults, it could be softening of the bones, weakness of the legs and knees, thinning hair. These are 10 things that you're seeing: premature growing hair, low libido, impotence, habitual miscarriage, infertility, wasting of flesh. So there's a natural aging process that happens for all of us. For women, it's age 49, which is the 7 times 7. This is the Chinese system, when menopause tends to set in. And so a lot of these symptoms start occurring then. For men, it's age 56, which is 7 times 8. And men are on an cycle of 8, and that's when andropause starts happening for men, and a lot of these symptoms start happening. So this is normal and natural. You can help slow this process by lifestyle habits and what you eat and drink, but they're going to happen for the most part. A lot of this is natural. So we're talking about if it's unnatural, if it's happening prematurely or too slowly, that's an essence imbalance. Now we also have Shen. This is our last of the fundamental properties here. And Shen is here we're talking about the entire physical, emotional, and spiritual health of the body. And Shen is the sheen in the face, and it's the sparkle in the eyes. It's the will to live. It's our charisma and dynamism. It's the innate vitality somebody has. It's the person's ability to think and act coherently and appropriately. It's really a personality's magnetic force, and the joy to live. It's housed in the heart, nourished by the blood, especially. So it's the dynamic vitality and force of our personalities and our ability to surmount obstacles and make things happen. This is the entire kind of encompassment of what Shen is. There are a couple Shen imbalances. The true remedy for Shen is working on the spiritual, emotional levels. Meditation, prayer, fantastic for this. And that involves resting and stopping, right? Counseling, talking to other people, taking breaks, or whatever you need to do to nourish your heart and your spirit. Nourishes your Shen. So imbalances include the typical are deficient heart blood or heat in the heart. And deficient heart blood, we're going to have some deficient blood symptoms. You might have dizziness, blurry vision, but you're going to have them mainly as they show in the heart. And we'll really get into this more on Thursday. So just read them there. The heat, well, and those are herbs that really help it. The longanberries I mentioned before, really good for all that talking. You'll see that talking and the tongue correspond to the heart. And biota seeds, polygala, ziziphus seeds, so forth. And I'm getting here we go. I already said that. And heart heat is when you have too much heat, it's in this case called fire because there's so much in the heart. And so you can become hysterical. You're talking, but people can't quite understand, irrational behavior. I mentioned that joy that's inappropriate, that would come in this category. Somebody laughing inappropriately or hysterically or jumping on the tables and doing things or violent madness. Anyway, that's one of the heart patterns that we'll cover. So the three treasures are considered of all these 5 fundamental properties are Shen, Qi, and Essence. And as you can see, Shen is linked with heaven. It's housed by the heart, and it's the emotional mental life. Qi is the person. Of course, they would say man is what traditionally you read, but I say person. It's the stomach and the spleen, and that's the first place where food and drink come in to form Qi. And it has to do with the state of Qi in the body. And essence, kidney, adrenals, and it's the earth or inherited constitution. So you have heaven, man, and earth, heaven, person, and earth. And these are quite often spoken of. These 3 we really want to have strong imbalance to have health in the body. And then I just want to mention stagnation here. Stagnation occurs when there's some sort of blockage or things are not flowing in the proper direction. There are 5 of these. Could be Qi, we mentioned that. Blood stasis, Qi stagnation. Fluids collects as dampness or phlegm when it stagnates. Food stagnation is like eating a big holiday meal and you can't move afterwards. You feel all that distension and pressure in your abdomen. You just want to lie around and groan. Most everybody has experienced food stagnation. That's the acute form. You can have it in a chronic form also, where it creates a blockage so that which typically leads to dampness or phlegm, and it doesn't allow for full and proper metabolism and assimilation of food and fluids to build blood and Qi. But you can also have cold stagnation, and a lot of us who have been in cold climates for whatever reason have experienced that. Cold can also invade externally into the body, and we'll talk about that on Friday. So treatment principles: regulate Qi, regulate blood, transform fluids or phlegm, dispel fluid stagnation, or dispel cold. And our last thing before we take a break, we started at 9:30, right? I'm going to go till another 10 minutes and we'll take some questions and then a break. So Yang is all, you could say, all the ephemeral aspects of life. So it's movement and warmth. Those are the two main qualities of yang. And so it's warming, it includes qi, it's the capacity to circulate, metabolize, transform, warm all aspects of the body. So it's warmth, libido, appetite, digestion, assimilation, the proper functioning of organs. So it's the sympathetic nervous system, if you will, that Christopher was talking about yesterday. And that's what yang does, is it provides all that moving and heating aspect needed for life function in the body. As you can see, there's some qi qualities here, right? Movement. So it includes qi. Qi is a subset, if you will, of yang. It's encompassed in yang. But yang is also warmth. So you can have deficient qi without coldness. You can have stagnant qi without coldness. Once you add in coldness, yang is involved. Or too much heat, yang is involved. Yin is all the substantial aspects of the living organism of the body. It's the muscle, the flesh, the organs, the blood and fluids. Essence and blood are part of it. Like qi is part of yang, essence and blood are part of yin. It's cooling and moistening in nature, whereas yang is warming and moving. So this is cooling and moistening. And so too much yin would be too many fluids. It would be dampness. Not enough yin is what we call deficient yin, and we're going to see what that looks like. So yang imbalances very quickly. Too much yang, it's a condition of heat, right? Because warmth is part of yang. So if it's acute, you could have a high fever, thirst. But if it's not acute, just a regular person, they still could be very thirsty. Red face, it's all those heat signs we covered at the beginning. Aversion to heat, restlessness, irritability, burning sensation, red eyes. Any discharges, excretions, secretions are yellowish, strong odors, and so forth and so on. It's that chart. And the chart I had early on, I took out of my book, Healing with the Herbs of Life, so you can find it in there. And you use herbs that clear heat. There's 5 different categories of clearing heat herbs that you will get into in the Materia Medica portion of the course. So here are just some examples. Deficient yang, this is a condition of coldness. There's not enough heating, metabolizing, warmth, and circulation in the body. So the person's going to feel cold. All those cold symptoms we talked about early on, same chart, are under here. Excretions, secretions are clear to white colored. Loose stools are diarrhea instead of constipation. Cold limbs, lassitude. Person feels cold, wearing lots of clothes. They might even have a frigid appearance. White to clear are the colors with this person. Even undigested food in the stools, not enough heat to fully metabolize food, so it passes through in the stools. 2 categories of herbs are used here. Herbs that warm the interior, so that really heat the body up. We call them herbs that revive the yang. Ginger revives the yang of the spleen and stomach, particularly dried ginger, because it's hot. Fresh ginger is warm, dried ginger is hot. Try this experiment for yourself. Get a root of fresh ginger, cut part of it off and leave it out on your counter. Put the fresh in the refrigerator. Wait a week and try eating some of the fresh ginger in the refrigerator and try eating some of the dried ginger from the counter. That's all I need to say. You'll find out for yourselves. Cinnamon bark revives the yang of the kidney adrenals. Aconite does as well, prepared aconite. Black pepper warms the lungs, revives the yang of the lungs. Garlic, I don't know which organ that works on. Everybody, everything. And then there's a category of herbs called herbs that tonify yang. Dipsacus is teasel, and we have that growing all over. And euphomia is another possibility. Now, yin imbalances. Yin is like excess yin is like too many fluids. It's dampness. And all the damp sides we talked about in the beginning and the pernicious influences, but they're internal. Heaviness, lethargy, edema, excessive secretions and secretions, so copious. Doesn't matter what the color is because dampness comes with either heat or cold, so you're going to see either one of those colors present. Loose stools. There's no thirst, or else the person is thirsty but only wants to drink small sips. That means they have dampness, and dampness with heat. They're thirsty, that's the heat, and they're damp because they only want to take small sips. If you have dampness and coldness, you're not going to be thirsty at all. You use herbs that drain dampness, so there are diuretics, are one of the categories of herbs used here. And as I had earlier with the I can't remember which category we had it in now, but the aromatic herbs that transform dampness, that was probably, oh, that was under dampness, duh. So cardamom, elecampane are two great examples here. Elecampane is a fabulous herb for transforming dampness, for clearing phlegm from the lungs, and it gives you energy at the same time. It's an amazing herb. Deficient yin. Deficient yin is a lack of cooling, moistening fluids in the body. So if you don't have enough fluids in the body, you can easily, will you be thirsty? Yes. Might you sweat? Yes. Because when you don't have enough cooling, moistening fluids, you're going down here, you don't have enough to balance the heat that's going on in the body. You're not cooling that heat down. You're not moistening the areas where there's friction and movement and so forth. So it creates heat. It's like running your engine low on oil. So the yin in this case in the car would be the oil that lubricates the engine, that keeps it from overheating. And if you overheat your engine, it starts steaming, it gets hot, and at some point the engine's going to die. So it's getting it's getting lethargic, and then at some point it's just going to stop. So the same thing with deficient yin. You need those cooling, moistening fluids. This is different than dryness. This is different than excess heat. It's a deficient heat, we call it. So this person could be emaciated. They might have a lot of energy, and then all of a sudden they're completely exhausted and they absolutely have to stop. They can't move another inch. So somebody with excess heat, they can go and go and go and go, or if they're stuck at the same time, they might not want to go, but they'll have all those, that loud breathing, that coarse breathing, loud voice, look red, all of that. Yin deficient heat has redness, but it's only in the cheeks or the nose, called malar flush. It could even be, oh, why am I not thinking of the name of the butterfly rash, the butterfly heat? That could be yin deficient. It could be excess too. Yin deficient heat, night sweat. So you're not sweating during the day or spontaneously sweating, you're sweating at night. Night is the yin time of day. It's dark, it's cool, it's moist. So symptoms can happen at night. You can also have hot flashes. So that's that sudden flash of heat that comes with the sweating. It's not spontaneous sweating, it's heat with that sweating at the same time. So hot flashes, that's, the kidney adrenals are not strong enough, or the hormone production is switching over to them, and the kidney adrenals aren't strong enough to handle it, so you get the hot flashes. Another sign and symptom, a burning sensation. It could be in 5 places all at once, or only in one of them, the chest, the palms, and or the soles of the feet. I've had people come in to me saying, I feel burning in my left foot. And I look down on the ground and I'm not standing on anything hot. Really, people talk about these things, and they're the kind of symptoms that Chinese medicine treats, or go into your Western doctor and they'll say, go to a psychiatrist. So this is another benefit of learning in energetic medicine, is it treats all those weird symptoms that don't have a place in normal diseases, according to Western medicine. So you can change all this. Yin deficiency, mental restlessness, irritability. They could get an afternoon fever or early evening. They tend to feel hot late afternoon, early evening. What else? Dry throat, particularly at night, and thirst at night. Agitation, dry cough, dry stool, scanty dark urine, all signs of heat anyway. There's a special category of herbs here called herbs that tonify yin. This is a little different than demulcents. Demulcents may be used like marshmallow slippery elm, aloe vera, but it's not the same as herbs that tonify yin, not only cool and moisten like demulcents, but they also give that extra that extra sort of energy to the body. American ginseng is in this category. Ophiobogon, which is Japanese turf lily, it's an ornamental that grows and has a little white moist bulb that it really is beautiful at tonifying yin. Chinese asparagus root, shatavari in Ayurvedic medicine. These are all really good yin tonics. So let's compare these, and then we're going to take a break and answer questions. So deficient yang and excess yin are both associated with dampness, and I stress that. Deficient yang is coldness, and if you have coldness, you're not going to transform fluids. You're not going to move fluids. Remember, yang is movement, transformation, and warmth. So you're not going to metabolize fluids or move fluids. When you don't do that, they're going to collect, and that creates dampness. Excess yin, the nature of yin is cooling and moistening. So excess yin is too many fluids. Again, you have the same thing, but it's treated differently. If you have deficient yang, you're going to have all those other deficient yang symptoms we had listed, and you're going to want to warm the interior and tonify yang. Whereas if you have excess yin, you have too much dampness. You want to dispel dampness. So you use herbs that drain or transform dampness. Now, what about excess yang and deficient yin? They're both heat, but they're different types of heat, very different. So excess yang is excess heat in the body. We don't call a pattern excess yang. Instead, we say excess heat or heat of whatever the organ is. So it's how you feel in the summertime when it's really hot outside. When it was 92 here the other day. You use herbs that clear heat. As I said, there's 5 different materia and medical categories because there's different types of heat. There's fire, there's damp heat, there's toxins, there's deficient heat, and there's heat in the blood. If you have deficient yin, it's a heat that arises out of a lack of moistening, cooling fluids. So think about that oil in your car. You don't have enough oil, so it's hot. The engine gets hot because of that, versus being in the sun a long time, so your seat is hot from excess heat. Completely different types of heat. With deficient yin heat, we want to tonify the yin. We want to moisten and cool and give that extra kind of umph. We just talked about that. And here's a chart, and this is one of your handouts. I gave you 2 handouts. They're just 1 page each. Don't you love my artistic endeavor here? And your handout is a little different picture of this. And I did this on purpose so you'd see 2 different ways of displaying this because some people relate to one more than others. On the left, you have the balanced yin and yang. So yin and yang are equal in the body. Next, we have excess. Both yin and yang are in excess, and that would be damp heat. In the next category, yin and yang can both be deficient. This happens a lot as people get older, particularly in later stages of life, older age. Both yin and yang can be deficient. And what do? You tonify both yin and yang together. Now, this is what excess yang looks like. As you can see, the clear box is the yang. The filled in box that looks dark is the yin. So yin is the same as it always has been, but the yang is greater. This is excess heat, too much heat. And what do you think could happen in this case? There's so much heat. Don't you imagine that the heat could actually start drying the fluids out in the body? And so the phlegm in the lungs might be watery, yellowish, but as the heat goes on, it's going to dry that. So you get yellow phlegm nodules. And at some point, it's very difficult to expectorate it because there's so much heat that the phlegm cannot even be expectorated from the lungs. It's just dried and stuck, phlegm nodules. So in this case, we want to clear the heat. And when we clear the heat by cooling herbs, we can then clear the heat from that phlegm in the lungs so it becomes more watery and can be expectorated, or whatever the other symptoms are that are happening. We want to clear the heat. Again, we've got those 5 clear heat categories. The other one next to it, the heat is very small, but the yin is still its normal balanced quality. When the heat is very small, as you could see, that would be coldness. We have too much coldness in the body, not enough heat to metabolize fluids. So at that point, the fluids can start dousing the fire. Imagine you have a burner on the stove going and you pour water on it. The fire goes out, right? Same thing can happen in the body. The water can douse the fires and they become even more depleted. Or you have a symptom that looks like a lot of extra fluids, even though it's balanced. What's really happening here is there's not enough heating, metabolizing, moving energy in the body to work with these fluids. So you're going to have coldness. In this case, that's going to be a major sign. And different ways to see coldness, we saw it with the deficient yang patterns. Next one, excess yin. Yang is balanced, it's normal, but look at how many fluids we have. We have too many. So in this case, the fluids also could put out the yang, or you could have cold damp or damp heat in this case. Now, here's the deficient yin. The yang is in balance, but there aren't enough cooling, metabolizing fluids. So the yang appears to be greater than it is. You might think, oh, that's heat signs, excess heat, but the heat is balanced, it's normal. What's happening is not enough oil in the tank, not enough oil in your body, not enough fluids to counterbalance the heat that's happening. All the body functions that are going on create heat. We've got to counterbalance that with moisture and coolness. You don't have enough. So in this case, we need to bring the yin up. We need to tonify the yin, and that will counterbalance the heat. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and I think we need a break. So I'm going to take questions at the end, unless there's some really burning questions. If you have a really, really burning question, type it in right now, and Sheila will bring it up to me. Otherwise, maybe I will clarify your question by continuing, because I'm going to be putting these things together in a system called the 8 principles after our break. So if it's not a real burning question, let's see if it doesn't get answered in the second half.
Hey, Lesley.
Yeah.
Sheila here. A couple of questions that came up as you were going along that I think you can just touch on real quickly. One had to do with hot and cold, going back to hot and cold, and signs and symptoms for constipation or diarrhea. And somebody asked, it seemed like it was opposite for Ayurveda. Why is, so can you just repeat real quickly, constipation, diarrhea, hot and cold?
Yes, and Ayurveda and Chinese medicine sometimes overlay very nicely, and sometimes they don't. So you have to take them as 2 different systems, number 1. Number 2, let's talk about diarrhea, because we can talk about hot and cold with diarrhea. Cold diarrhea is going to be watery, clear stools, and a lot of them, and frequent bowel movements. Hot diarrhea can be frequent bowel movements, but there's going to be more odor to it. There's going to be yellowy. It could still be watery, but it's going to be yellowy. It's going to feel hot. There might be a burning anus, and it's yellowish. Whereas the cold diarrhea just kind of falls out. There might be undigested food in the stools. It's frequent, of course. It's clear and copious in terms of the fluid in the stool. So that's the difference between the hot and cold diarrhea. And all symptoms in the body, most all symptoms in the body, let's say it that way, can appear with the coldness or the heat. And they're going to have the differences according to the hot signs and symptoms and the cold signs and symptoms. In fact, during break, what I'll do is I'll just go up to that chart and leave that up for you so you can really get heat and coldness down. This is really important to get down.
And then another question that came up, and I'm not sure if I answered it in our comments. Can digestion be cold and blood hot
Oh,
at the
absolutely.
same time?
Absolutely. Cold digestion would be like deficient yang, deficient spleen yang. We'll see that pattern on Thursday, but it would include things like no appetite, diarrhea or loose stools, undigested food in the stools, things like that. And hot blood is heat in the blood, which we talked about earlier. So it could be bleeding anywhere from any orifice, or hemorrhaging, or red skin spots. And that would be heat in the blood. I hope that's what you were asking.
Okay, let's see. So we've had an active little chat session on the sidebar here, and I've been answering questions as we go along. So I think
Great.
we are mostly caught up. But I think, yeah, we should go ahead and take a break. Students, attendees, if you have questions that we haven't covered, go ahead and type them in, and maybe we can address some of those right at the top after our break. Or do you want to hold those up till the end?
I'm sorry, what were you saying about the questions? Take those questions at the top of the break. We could take a few at the very top of the break afterwards, yeah.
Okay.
And let's take 10 minutes. I would
Okay.
say that would be what, 20 after the hour?
Yeah, my clock says 11:07 Pacific time. So we'll take 10 minutes and we'll come back at 11:17.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Do your fluid adjustments and stretch your bodies and step away from your screen.
Where's the panel? I'm trying to get my panel to show and it's not showing. It's you're going to have to mute me and unmute me because
Okay.
for some reason my panel is stuck up and I can't pull it down to show it or not show it. So if you would mute me, that would be great. Right now.
Yes. Let's see.
No, I can't. Look at this. I don't know what's going on, but Sheila should be able to mute me. Let's go outside.
Okay.
Oh, good. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sheila. All right. I know Michael he made some comments. I don't know if you all saw them in your question box about wind that were really wonderful about it being neurological and histamines and so forth. Michael, are you there? Can you unmute, Michael?
Let's see. I don't see Michael.
Well, did you see them in the question box, his comments?
I did. I saw his comment,
Perfect.
yes.
Everybody saw them already. Okay, that's all that matters. Okay. All right. So a little TCM.
Oops. 1 second. Sorry, I hit the mute button. You're back
That's
on.
okay.
My bad.
You have the power, Sheila. I better behave myself. Okay. Were there any burning questions I needed to answer before I get going again?
We do have a question about basically about false heat. So the Haley is asking, could excess yang and deficient yin give similar symptoms? If so, what's the easiest way to tell the difference between the two?
They do not have the same symptoms. Excess yang and deficient yin, is that what it was?
Correct.
Yes, they do not have the same symptoms. And we're going to get into that a little bit further. You'll see it. But excess yang is, as I said, you have a complete red face, maybe neck, for instance. Deficient yin, just the malar flush. Excess heat, very restless at night, can't go to sleep. Deficient yin sleep, you might have night sweats. Excess yang, sweating all night. Deficient yin, some night sweats that come. And it's a floating in and out sleep. You think you're awake, but you're not quite awake. You think you're asleep, but you're not quite asleep. That's deficient yin sleep. Deficient yang, excess yang is going to have any secretions, excretions will tend to be more copious than yin. Deficient is really because there's not enough fluids. So dry, non-productive cough, scanty dark yellow urine. You could have dry stools for either one, but excess heat, you might have watery yellow stools versus the really dry, difficult to expel stools. So there's many, many more of these. Excess yang, you're hot all the time. Deficient yin, you're hot in the late afternoon and evening. So you have more deficiency signs, if you will, not the same kind of heat, the 5 palm heat you don't get with the excess yang. You're hot everywhere, burning. And yes, deficient yin can be called a false heat. So you will see that sometimes, false heat, meaning it's not a true excess heat, but it is heat appearing out of deficiency. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, quickly about TCM physiology. This is how the organs interact with each other in the body. And you've got the upper part of the body called the upper burner or the upper warmer, which includes the heart and the lungs. You've got the middle burner or the middle part of the body, which is the spleen and stomach. Sometimes the liver's put there, but a lot of times the liver's put in the lower part of the body. And then you have the lower part of the body, you probably can't see here, but it's from basically the navel on down. So you have the intestines, kidneys, bladder, uterus, reproductive organs in general. So that's the lower part of the body. And so we eat and drink, and it comes into the stomach, and the stomach breaks it down. It's the spleen energy that transforms and transports everything. That chi that transforms and transports is in the spleen, ruled by the spleen. So the pure of food chi, it's called, is sent up to the lungs, where air is coming into the lungs. And there it propels it to the heart. So excuse me, it's mixing with air, it propels to the heart where it mixes with blood. And this is what forms chi and blood in the body. And it's sent down everywhere. So the gross part of the food and drink is sent on to the small intestine. There's more separation of pure and impure that happens there. The pure goes on to the bladder, which gets purified further to moisten the skin and muscles. The impure dross goes to the large intestine, where there's some more absorption that happens of some of the fluids, but the impure is sent on out. So as you can see, the kidneys are filtering blood, dealing with fluids. They send them on, the impure is sent to the bladder to be expelled. The pure, again, is sent up to the skin and muscles. And the kidney energy also communicates both with the heart and the lungs, where remember that chi that holds the chi, and the strength of the kidney adrenals is what holds the chi in the lungs. So it helps pull breath down. When we inhale, it helps pull that air down. And for the heart, you've got, well, we saw the original chi is formed, and the post-heaven, pre-heaven essences resides in the kidney adrenals. And all of that, plus what is gained, the pure out of the kidneys, goes up to also mix with what's coming in through the lungs, mix in the heart and form blood and chi. So there's an interaction with everything. And if you look at the very bottom right, you see a little diagram I did where you have a soup pot. Imagine that's a soup pot on a burner filled with fluids and blood and essence. And below it, you've got fire, and that's your yang. And then it all goes to the internal organs. And the chi is the container itself that holds everything. So that's another way of thinking about it. And that's your handout. So there's daily and seasonal biorhythms that you're going to see in the 5 elements, but these I use all the time diagnostically. And just imagine the early part of the day, 3 to 5 in the morning. This is a lot of times when yogis meditate and recommend meditation, 3 to 5 a.m. because the air is the purest. So this is the lungs, and its partner, the large intestine, is 5 to 7, and so on. Then you go into the stomach where you're eating for the beginning of the day, breaking your fast. Spleen does transforming. Then you're creating heat and blood and chi. It goes to the lungs and the heart, as we just saw, to create blood and chi to nourish the whole body. And the small intestine, its partner. And now the small intestine and the bladder, we're getting rid of dross. And bladder and kidneys, as you can see, a lot of people between bladder kidney time get an energy crash or a brain crash. And that's when they go for stimulants, caffeine, sugar, chocolate, between the 3 and 5 in the afternoon. A nap is the thing to take, siesta, because that's what will truly replenish, rather than stimulants, which just, it's like taking money out of your trust fund, if you will. Okay, and then it goes so on throughout the night. And we'll talk about these more as we get into the organs. Here are the seasons. Each element rules a season for about 2.5 months. And we just finished liver time, and we're just going into heart time of year, as you can see, which will last till the end of June. And then we're in spleen time. You have the monsoons appear at this time of year. It's sometimes called Indian summer or late summer. And then into the lung time of year, which is the dry autumn time, and kidneys, the cool winter time. And then, of course, spring is the wood element. Imagine a tree growing and leafing out like all our trees just have done. And the fruit blossoms, and they're starting to grow the fruit. It's the beginning of the whole season. So what happens is these organs are supposed to thrive during their season, and they are weakest at the opposite time of year of their season. So a lot of times symptoms and signs will appear during either during its organ's time or opposite its organ's time. So a lot of people, it's kind of a not a happy thought here, but a lot of people die early December. And it's completely opposite the depth of the kidney time of year. And people think, oh, it's Christmas and they're lonely and stuff, but a lot of people who die then have people, and it's not about, you know, holidays and celebration. It's because the kidney adrenals are not communicating with the heart. Quite often they have heart stuff that appears then. Opposite time of year. Okay, and same time for the kidney adrenals. Let's move on. Okay, the 8 principles. I'm going to stick with this chart here. This is also out of my book. I hope you can read this all. Let's do it briefly first. 8 principles. This is a way of assessing an illness. You assess the location of it. Where is it? On the surface of the body or the exterior part or inside the body? You assess the nature of it. What's the energy, heating or cooling? And then you assess the strength of it. Sometimes it's called the condition of the ailment. So is it excessive or deficient? Sometimes it's called full and empty. Excess can be called full, deficient can be called empty. And is it yang or yin, which is the root of those 6 factors. So it's one of the most important paradigms in TCM because it, as I said, it shows the location, nature, and strength of an ailment, overall yin and yang condition of it. Stagnation can still appear here, but this is the major assessment paradigm that we use. And everything we discussed before fits into this paradigm, as I will show you. So, briefly, external is the surface of the body. Again, it could be invading colds and flus, or it could be allergies, hay fever, sinus infections. It could be skin stuff, sore throat, headaches. Of course, injuries can fit anywhere. And certain acute arthritic conditions can happen here. Internal is everything inside the body. So it's everything else. Excess is, again, when you have too much of something or a stagnation of something. All those things we talked about: cold, damp, heat, phlegm, and so forth, yin and yang. And deficiency is a lack of something. It might be in one part of the body. It could be overall in the body. It could be of qi, blood, fluids, essence, or shen. And then we have hot and cold. That's heat and coldness. I had the chart up at break time. We've covered that. And yin and yang kind of encompass all the rest of the 6 properties and show up in patterns with this. Now, we're going to cover the basic 8 principles here. But when we take it the next step, we add in the organs, which is what we do Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You're going to get some of the organ stuff on Wednesday with 5 elements. I'm going to thoroughly go into the patterns, the main patterns that are seen and experienced, and the herbs used on Thursday and part of Friday, and then Friday we'll put it all together. How do you use this system when somebody comes to you with depression, when somebody comes to you with lower back pain, when somebody presents with headaches, certain types of headaches. Okay, any type of headache. So let's cover a little bit more thoroughly exterior, interior. So the exterior, as I said, is the surface of the body. It's the skin, it's the muscles, it's the channels. The channels are the meridians that flow underneath the skin. And so this is most influenced by external factors, be it pernicious influences that we talked about, injury, of course, where we can bruise on the skin, climate conditions. And imagine when this system was developed, they say about 5,000 years ago, that people were living, it was an agricultural society, but a lot of them were living outside in the fields. You might have a little hut for protection, but not necessarily from the elements. You might get rained on, you might have summer heat because you're out in the heat too long, or the dryness or coldness or whatever. So a lot of these factors you can think of as climatic, as the climate. And that might help you relate to them a little bit better. Okay, So exterior conditions tend to be more acute. They tend to be more superficially located and usually in one spot. It might be all over like certain skin conditions, but certain skin conditions have internal factors also. They tend to be bacterial or viral. We're all familiar with exterior conditions. Sometimes it's called external. So exterior, external are substitutes for each other. Interior, internal as well. Interior, everything else. Result of either the external pathogenic factors moving stuff into the interior, or it arises from the interior. So remember I said earlier, you can have cold invading. You can actually have not just cold invading into the back of the neck, creating a cold or flu or stiff neck, a stuffy nose and so forth, but you can have it invade directly into the stomach, affecting the menses, or the abdomen, affecting the intestines. So a couple of these factors can do that. So here's some more examples of exterior. Aversion to cold and heat, fever, thin white tongue coating could be normal, but sometimes it indicates a wind chill condition, meaning there's wind and coldness blowing into the body, creating an acute condition. Floating pulse, you're gonna get all the pulse and tongue on those great webinars when you watch them. Stiff neck, body aches, itching, skin itching is wind. Pains, lots of sneezing is wind. But it's external. All this is external. Nasal congestion, runny nose, sore throat, allergies, everything I talked about. And so properties that you would use are herbs that treat wind chill or wind heat. I talked about these. So diaphoretics, antivirals, febrifuges, so lower fevers, expectorants, antipyretics, alteratives, emollients topically, hemostatics to stop bleeding, rubefactants to bring something out. In TCM, the categories are called dispel wind chill, dispel wind heat, dispel wind damp, expel phlegm, relieve cough and asthma. So you can go right now into your course and look up all of these categories and just scan the herbs that are in these categories so you get an idea of them. We've divided lessons 13 through 30 completely into all the materia medica categories, the Chinese materia medica categories, done the crossover with the Western and Ayurvedic, and have the herbs from all herbs from all those three traditions and others in those categories. So become familiar with them. It will really help you as you go through this, because the whole reason we're learning this, these fundamental properties in this energetic system is so you know which herbs to choose for the best, most effective, efficient treatment and to not harm somebody. Okay, interior, everything else. Sometimes an external pathogen can invade and go deeper. As you know, certain viruses are very virulent and can immediately and quickly go into the interior. It's colds and flus can change very fast, in other words. And if so, they can start invading where the person doesn't have the acute stuff anymore, but they might have a high fever, no sweating. They're more out of it. They might still sweat if there's a lot of heat, but a lot of times at some point they stop sweating. A lot of these symptoms you see here. And in this case, we need to treat somebody half interior, half exterior. And let's see if we have this right here. You can have coexisting exterior and interior, where you have separate conditions. So you've got, let's say you've got hypertension, or you've got depression, or you've got menstrual issues, but at the same time you get a cold or flu. That's an example of coexisting. But an example of this half exterior, half interior I'm talking about, where you have something has invaded externally and then it goes partway into the body. It's not all the way in, but it's partway. Then you can get symptoms of alternating fever and chills, a fullness of the chest and the hypochondria, loss of appetite, listlessness, nausea, a bitter taste in the mouth, a dry throat, even some dizziness. And what's happening here is you don't have the complete external on the surface cold or flu symptom, but instead you partially have it inside the body as well. And I see this quite often. If it doesn't get dispelled, if it doesn't get pulled out or expelled from the body, it can actually linger there for years. So somebody can get over the acute form of the cold or flu, but they never feel quite right for even years afterwards, or ever since then they've had a pain in a joint, or ever since then they've had some particular symptom that came up that they just can't get rid of. And that's because it's not fully in the interior of the body or on the exterior, it's halfway in. And the way you treat this is you have to open the surface. It's like the robber is trapped in the house. So you have to open the window so the robber can escape. And then at the same time, clear the heat or the coldness or move the chi or whatever it is that you need to do at the same time to push that robber out of the house. Thankfully, there are two major herbs that do this. One is used more by the Chinese, one is used more by the Japanese. The Chinese use Bluperum, B-U-P-L-E-U-R-U-M. And that herb does so many things. It's used for wind cold, for wind chill, it's a diaphoretic. It also regulates the chi, but it also moves stuff out of the body that's half interior, half exterior, because it has both that presence, internal and external. And the other herb the Japanese use a lot is Quaria, kuzu root, but it's a refined it's not refined from the starch, it's the root. All those of you living in the South with that kudzu vine growing over all the signs in the roadways should absolutely learn how to harvest this plant. And you use the root. It's just an amazing herb that has so many properties. So it treats as half exterior, half interior syndrome. It's fabulous for tight neck and shoulders, for tight muscles anywhere. It's great for diarrhea and intestinal stuff. Anyway, does the same thing, half exterior, half interior. And oh, I say it right here. So you want to harmonize the interior, exterior, and these are the two herbs. Now I did skip a slide up here, but really we covered it, which is the interior patterns and the treatment method. You know, if there's coldness, warm it. If there's heat, cool it. If there's deficiency, tonify it. If there's excess, drain it. If there's stagnation, move it. Okay, cold and heat, the nature or the energy of the disease. Cold, we talked about a lot this morning, and I left that chart up. So coldness, usually if it's excess, if somebody has a lot of coldness, we call it deficient yang. There's not enough heat. But there can also be coldness in an organ. Oop, instead of lost stools, it's loose stools. Major signs, person feels cold. Cold limbs, no thirst, pale face, pale tongue, or swollen tongue. If there's coldness, well, it could be pale, it might be swollen. But the fur on it, the coat will be white to clear and moist. Because once you have coldness, you have more fluids that are appearing, not enough heat to metabolize those fluids, so they're starting to collect. The urine is clear and abundant. There's no odor to it. And in fact, this person might have no body odor, no odor to the urine or the stool. The more coldness they have, the more that's present. They want to drink warm things. They want to dress warmly. We covered all this. The pulse is slow or tight, and the tongue is pale. And you use the herbs that warm and eliminate cold, internally warm and eliminate. And if there's yang deficiency signs, we tonify yang. Heat patterns, We covered this. Again, you can, the fever, thirst, red eyes, scanny dark urine, completely opposite from the coldness. Red tongue with yellow fur tends to be drier because heat dries up fluids. So any kind of secretions, excretions, or coatings are going to tend toward dryness unless there's dampness and heat, and then it will be greasy and yellow. A rapid pulse, and we have all those clear heat categories I mentioned before. And oh, here's another chart comparing cold and heat. Boy, I'm really emphasizing this today. Okay. So let's get to empty heat or false heat. Again, we talked about this. This is when there's a deficient yin condition, not enough cooling, moistening fluids. So the heat present appears hotter. Again, here are your signs and symptoms. Fever, feeling hot in the late afternoon, early evening, dry mouth, throat at night, night sweats, could have hot flashes, that 5 palm heat, dry stools, scanny dark urine. The pulse is floating and empty and rapid. And the tongue coat is peeled. So you'll see a coat, and then all of a sudden it looks like somebody just took part of the coat off and peeled it off. So it's red underneath without a coat. It's fascinating. Tongue diagnosis, you'll see it. Now we have the condition, excess or deficient. What is the strength of the disease? Is it stronger than the body's capacity, or is the body's capacity stronger? So it has to do with whether or not there's a pathogenic factor or the strength of the body's energy. In deficiency, it's a state of weakness and insufficiency of some fundamental property. Excess, it's a state of overabundance or stagnation. All stagnation is excess. Now, can you have deficiency and excess at the same time? Yes. Can you have deficiency and stagnation at the same time? Yes. Can you have coldness and heat at the same time? Yes. Can you have external and internal at the same time? I already told you, yes. So let's move on. Deficiency symptoms, we've covered these basically, but so there's weakness in any kind of the signs and symptoms you see. Weak voice, weak breathing, any tinnitus is weak. It's low pitched, it's not as loud. There's slight sweating, not a lot of sweating. There may even be spontaneous sweating. Frequent colds and flus. Person doesn't have enough of that defensive chi. Apathy, lying curled up, listless. They tend more toward chronic ailments. Frequent urination, even nighttime urination, which tends to be deficient yang, is nighttime urination versus the daytime. Daytime is more frequent, or although you can have frequent at night, would be chi deficiency, but also that leaking, urinary leakage or incontinence. That's all chi deficiency. Chi's not holding. Loose stools, weak pulse. That all comes under deficiency. So what do we want to do? Tonify. What do we tonify? Chi, blood, yin, yang, essence or shen. And here, deficiency, I'll just let you look at this briefly, how this all can appear in comparison. So chi, blood, yin, and yang. There we got them all. And chi and yang go together, blood and yin go together. And remember, blood being deficient, dizziness, blurry vision, very major signs of that, numbness, paleness. Yang, you could have paleness also, but you don't have dizziness or blurry vision. Instead, you have coldness. See how those are different? Yang deficient person tends to be cold at night and wake up more at the 5 to 7 a.m. time and can't go back to sleep. Okay, I'm going to move on. Excess, blah, blah, blah. We covered all this. A lot of this looks like excess heat, doesn't it? So here we want to eliminate, detoxify, dispel, purge, move. We want to clear things. When there's too much of stuff, we want to clear it or move it if there's stagnation. Boy, I've got a lot of repetition here. Sorry about that. I must have really wanted to get that. Okay, yin and yang summarize the prior 6 principles. So yin diseases tend to be interior, deficient, cold, and chronic. Yang tend to be exterior, excess heat, and acute. However, there are, of course, exceptions to that. And they're mostly used in terms of talking about deficient yin or yang or collapse of yin or yang. Collapse is an extreme state of emptiness, and it also implies there's separation. So by collapse, I'm talking about end of life. Or somebody in an emergency situation who is getting close to that, like the heat, not the exhaustion, but the heat. Oh, you're thinking about it all. But anyway, it tends to be end of life where they're completely collapsing, they're separating. It's not somebody who's going to walk into your clinic, that's for sure. But it might be a family member. So this is just the nature of yin and yang and how it progresses and how it relates to all these factors. So, okay. I have finished what I was going to cover today. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to cover today? Why don't I leave this up? And that leaves us a good half hour for questions. Let me see if there's a summary thing I want to tell you all. Again, these are the building blocks. These are the fundamental parts that you put together. So let me continue here with these. I want to go back up to this first chart I had. Right here. You have combinations of these 8 principles. You don't see external discreetly, internal discreetly, excess or deficiency discreetly, hot or cold discreetly. Instead, they are combinations. This is how we put them together. So somebody comes into you with a cold or flu, let's say. It's acute. Okay, external. Right away, we know it's external. They have lots of sweating, very thirsty, yellow phlegm coming out of their nose. Is that cold or hot? It's hot. I know you all said that. Now, they have coarse breathing. They have dark, scanty urine. They have constipation. They have lots of this phlegm coming out. Their whole body smells. They're kind of aggressive about what can you give me? What can I take? Irritable. A lot of this is heat, but what I'm trying to get to is that it's an excessive condition. So we would call that external, excess, hot, or yang. We call it external heat would be the pattern, and it would be according to the lungs in terms of the organs in this case, because the lungs rule the skin and the open to the surface. We'll get into all of that. Unless you've reviewed those chapters already, which I know you have. So that's one. We can do the same thing with external, deficient, cold, and yin. However, you can have external deficiency that's cold. You can have external deficiency that's hot. You can have internal excess hot, yang. You can have internal excess cold and yin. That would be like a lot of cold dampness. You can have internal deficient hot in yin. That would be that deficient yin, like the oil, the empty heat or false heat. The oil is drying up. You can have internal excess cold yang. So that would be like a deficient yang. Oh, excess, I said. Internal excess cold yang would be, well, I'm not sure why I said yang, but that fits it more. It would be excess cold, damp fluids that are going to dampen the fires at some point, and then you're going to end up with deficient yang, or it could be coexisting. So you see what I'm saying? You can have these going on at the same time. Can you have excess heat and deficient yin going on at the same time? It's possible. You're going to have more the deficient yin symptoms happening everywhere, but you could have excess heat in one particular organ. It's not, it depends on how progressed the deficient yin is, how much it has affected the entire body and the organs. You can have a slight amount of deficient yin, you can have a slight amount of deficient yang, or you can have more progressed deficient yin, more progressed deficient yang. So these things are not discrete. They are on a continuum, and it's a matter of where you are on that continuum. You can have heat and cold in the body at the same time. You could have coldness in your digestion and heat in your liver, or heat in your lungs. You can have, or, oh, sorry about that. You can have other combinations. I should have unplugged that. You can have excess and deficiency at the same time. How that would look is an organ that's hypofunctioning in terms of its signs and symptoms, which we'll learn about on Thursday, and stagnation happening somewhere in the body, or excess heat in the liver and deficient yin or yang of the kidneys. That's a really common pattern. So you can have any combination of these things, and of course you can have external and internal conditions happening simultaneously, and you can have half internal and half external. Okay, so I'd love to take questions now. Sheila, can you hear me? Oh, I have 11:57. My clock is different than my computer.
Hi, Lesley. I just unmuted myself.
Excellent.
There is a question here, which I think might be a good one for you. Let's see. Fatima is asking if someone has slow metabolism, edema in lower limbs, high cholesterol, irregular menses, but has good sleep, good appetite, regular thirst, would you say it's deficient yang, deficient qi?
Okay.
And I suggested that you might just start with a chart and put each of the symptoms, categorize each symptom one by one, and then see how it all adds up. What would you say?
Excellent. Yes. I mean, that's how I do cases. How I'm going to do them on Friday is exactly that. Is you've got the chart, you've got the 8 principle chart, you've got the hot and cold chart, and what's the main complaint here? First, so that's important also. So what were the things that were off? Edema in the legs?
Edema in lower limbs, slow metabolism, high cholesterol, irregular menses.
Okay, this would be a great question for Friday, but I'll give you a little taste. So number one, yes, take your charts of what you see and put the categories in there. Now, edema of the limbs is going to be dampness, right? So we want to ask them, are they cold or are they hot? We want to start getting that feeling. We're also going to look at the tongue and feel the pulse and get a sense of, is it rapid or slow? Is there coldness or heat? Slow metabolism tends to be either coldness and or deficient qi. So that's how it's going to fit in there. High cholesterol again, we're not treating diseases, we're treating the person. So this is more of a, well, high cholesterol tends to be damp heat, but it also can be from coldness, stagnating the fats in the body and encapsulating it, which comes from the diet. And since this particular person has slow metabolism and edema, I would say, and this high cholesterol, I would say it's from coldness, and that there's coldness going on, that and or deficient yang. I'd want to ask them if the person, if they feel cold anywhere or tend towards coldness, less thirst, you know, do they look more pale, all of that. I'd want to know where the edema is in the body. Is it the ankles? Is it farther up the legs, you know, farther? But more than likely there's coldness and possibly and probably deficient yang going on. Now the irregular menses, is it irregular blood flow or irregular cycle? Some women have an irregular cycle their whole lives, and that's what's normal for them. Others, it's just irregular now for a certain time period. And coldness can absolutely affect that, can affect the cycle like that. As well as it could be chi stagnation, it could be blood stasis, it could be, you know, some other factors. So what I recommend you do, if you have my Healing with the Herbs of Life, you go to the chapter about treatment of specific conditions. And in here, you will see menses, for instance. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got a stagnant cold pattern for menstruation. And that's more pain than irregular. You've got 8, you've got 4 excess patterns and 1, 2, 3 deficiency patterns. So there's 7 possible patterns. And you'd see usually irregular menses is a chi stagnation, but it could be caused by coldness, so the blood is stagnating too. You see how it all kind of fits in? You have to go further than just the symptoms. So this is a good point that's coming up. In order to go further with all of these basic fundamentals, you want to use what are called the 4 methods of diagnosis. And they are all in I think they're in my book, but they're all in this book for sure. So you have interrogation. And now this is not shining a light on somebody, interrogating them. This is asking questions. And the questions you want to ask, there's 10 main questions to ask, and they're all listed for you. And that helps you determine a lot of these 8 principles. It helps you determine the nature, the condition, the strength, the location, all of that. But then you also want to do smelling and listening. That gives you lots of information. I've been telling you some of the things. Somebody has a lot of body odor, that's heat. They have none and a soft voice, that's more coldness or deficiency. You want to listen also, the tone of their voice. I think Michael brought that up. Well, it might have been in the afternoon on Friday, but it might have been in the morning. And just listening to how people speak and the tone of their voice can tell you a lot of information. The organs involved and other things that are going on. You know, if somebody has a very soft voice or a really loud voice, a sharp voice, those kinds of things. So also palpation is another method. And palpation includes feeling the pulse, which you're going to learn as best we can teach it in the webinar. That's one of the things we love doing on site. And then you've got dozens and dozens of people to take pulses from, and you're not going to be able to do that now anyway, because, you know, you're not supposed to be touching other people outside your household, right? So anybody in your household, just take their pulses, look at their tongues, do what you can. And then there's looking also, for which includes the tongue. And tongue diagnosis, you know, whoever you can in your household, but you can also diagnose tongues on TV, in movies. People are showing their tongues all the time, and you really can get good ideas of what they're experiencing in your body just by looking at that. So you gather all that information, observation, auditory, smelling, palpation, interrogation. You gather all that information, and then from there, you're going to start seeing patterns arise. You're going to, like I just did with the edema, the slow metabolism, so forth. I was automatically going toward either deficiency or probably dampness. Now I know edema in the legs typically is a yang deficiency. And usually it's kidney yang, it could go into heart yang. So I already know that. You're going to be getting that on Thursday. So anyway, great question, led into a lot of other stuff I wanted to tell you. And that's my answer. I'm sticking it to it.
Lesley, Sadie is asking about the 10 questions. Our time right now is 12:05. Is that something you feel like discussing today?
Sure. Yeah, usually when I do the class live, I take questions as we go along. Sometimes we start a little late, we take longer breaks because people are acting and so forth. So this is great. We have this extra time period for questions. So the 10 questions, you're going to be asking things like sweating. Is somebody sweating or not? And that's going to help you in terms of external, internal. And I'm just going to go over the 10 questions that are in the book. And of course, you can ask whatever other questions you want to. Once you know the patterns of the body and somebody says, I sweat real easily, you want to automatically ask, is it spontaneous sweating? Is it only at night? Does it happen all day long? Does it happen all night? Or questions that would identify if it's a cold or flu. So although that is typically obvious, but so you refine the questions. So interrogation, chills and fever. You have chills or fever. Sweating, as I said, perspiration. And this book, Chinese Traditional Herbal Medicine, I keep looking at the title because we had a different title at first that I remember more than this one. Anyway, this has not only all the questions, it also has different things that could occur within these questions and formulas to recommend for them. So it's got everything. In the past, students call this Orange Book 1 or Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan. So if you hear Obi-Wan, they're not talking about Kenobi. They're talking about Orange Book 1. Okay, back to sweating. Because sweating can happen if there's chest discomfort, right? That's important to differentiate. Pain. Does a person have any pain, especially headaches, chest pain, abdominal pain, other aches and pains? Defecation. So we want to know about elimination, defecation and urination, menstruation. Appetite. Hearing, thirst, mental condition. So we don't ask, are you mental, right? We're going to ask emotions, feelings, any thoughts that recur, you know, that kind of stuff. Usually people put it in. I have it on my intake form. I have, what are your predominant emotions? Are you happy with your life? Do you feel stressed? You know, those kind of general questions, because I have like a 4-page intake form that I have people fill out before they come in to see me. And I can look at that in a glance and know and see what patterns are typically going on or could be happening, and what questions to ask them to clarify it. So it really speeds the process up and helps you dive in deeper more quickly, which is what I'm going to help you do this week. So that should be 10 questions. Chills and fever, perspiration, headaches, chest, abdominal, or other aches and pains. 3, defecation, urination, appetite, hearing, thirst, mental condition, menstruation. 10. All right.
Lesley, I have a specific question and a general question. And I'll give them to you both and then you can answer. The specific question is from Ria, what could it be a sign of when someone only sweats when they're cold? And the general question comes from Jill, and she wants to know if you want to try unmuting everybody for questions.
That would be interesting. So let's answer the sweats from cold first, and then we'll try unmuting. Okay, on sweats from cold only, that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, if this is happening to the person typically, then I would say they probably have an excess cold dampness. This is a body type. It tends to be a little bit bigger, maybe a little overweight, and they sweat easily, but they're not necessarily hot. They could be cold. So if it's not coming in from the external, that's a lot of times when I have seen that happen. And so it's an excess condition. There's too many fluids. It's excess dampness. You need to dispel the fluids. And diuretics work really great here. But a lot of times you have to tonify the qi or the yang at the same time to help metabolize and move those fluids. That's my best guess right now. Okay, you want to try unmuting everybody? And it's so
I'm
weird
gonna
just
try
seeing my PowerPoint. That's all I see is my PowerPoint and my little green light. So,
Okay, so the way this works, we have 60 people in attendance, and at this point, everyone is unmuted on my end, but you also individually have to unmute yourself on your end. We can try and just opening it up. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, we'll give it a shot. And if it ends up being a little bit too confusing, then we might try and make it a little more organized somehow. But go ahead and try unmuting yourself if you have a question. Tanya says, can't unmute. So just as a technical note, you should be able to see a microphone icon where you are, and you should be able to unmute yourself. Unmute all. And or
remember this happened Friday where some people, if your microphone is gray, your auditory needs to be changed. Either plug in earphones or change to your computer audio or some
Mine's
audio.
fine, just needed to be unmuted, but from her.
Okay,
And
good.
okay.
Muted me, so thanks.
Okay.
Jill, I just want to confirm I unmuted myself too. I clicked on the red microphone and it turned green, which means I'm unmuted, which I think is true because you're nodding.
Yes, we can hear you, Jill.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, Lesley. Hi, Sheila.
Hi.
Anybody have any questions? Unmute yourself and ask away.
I have a question.
Who is it, please, first?
What would be the discernment between qi and yang as a general concept?
Coldness or heat.
Thank you.
So yang is warmth and movement. Qi is movement. So if you see any coldness, then you've got yang involved. Otherwise, too much yang would be excess heat.
Thank you.
And too much qi is qi stagnation. When you ask your question, everyone, tell me your name first. I'd like to know who I'm speaking with.
That was Tanya.
Tanya, all right. Thank you.
And if you're not able to unmute yourself, send me something in the question box and I'll see if I can help out on my end.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Summer. I was wondering, so in cases of stagnation is always a condition of excess, correct?
Yes.
So in chi stagnation, would it be harmful to administer an herb like astragalus, or is that more of like a moderating herb, or like how do you I don't know. I guess I'm thinking like because astragalus is one of the ones that moves and tonifies chi. Would that be actually detrimental to use in a case of chi stagnation?
Excellent question. So it depends on how prevalent the chi stagnation is. If the chi stagnation is really strong in the body through signs and symptoms, you never, ever, ever want to tonify. That's like adding more cars to the traffic jam. So you don't ever want to tonify, and astragalus is a tonic. You want to only move chi. Some people have lack of energy and are tired all the time, but it's not from chi deficiency, it's from chi stagnation. So if you move everything and even eliminate some of the cars from the freeway, which would be clearing heat or dampness, whatever it is, then they get energy because things are circulating and getting where they need to. It's like a lot of older people have coldness or freezing, but they're not deficient necessarily. Their circulation is not moving. So you've got to get the blood moving in order to warm them up. Some people now could have both chi deficiency and chi stagnation. So what do you do in that case? You combine both herbs, depending on which is stronger. So if chi stagnation is really strong, you'd have more chi moving herbs and just a little chi tonic. Or if you have more chi deficiency, you'd have more chi tonics, but you include a chi moving herb. And in fact, all Chinese tonic formulas tend to have moving herbs included. The major chi tonic formula has citrus in there for moving, which is tangerine. They're moving the chi. The blood tonic formulas always have herbs for moving blood in them, and so forth, to make sure that chi, that when you tonify, that it doesn't get stagnant. So thank you for that. Some of your most powerful formulas combine herbs, combine heating and cooling herbs, tonifying and eliminating herbs, all together. The same
Thank
thing
you.
can happen sometimes with an exterior condition. For exterior conditions, we never want to tonify, right? You've got this acute invasion of something. You want to move it out and eliminate it. But a really deficient person won't have enough energy to move it out. So with your diaphoretics, you might actually have to include a little bit of a chi tonic to strengthen, give enough energy to push the pathogen out. Great question. Thank you, Summer. Anyone else?
We have a comment from Tressie who says, I don't need to unmute. I just want to thank you guys for doing this online. I wanted to come to seminar for years, but haven't been able to travel to it. This is really wonderful for feeling a part of the school. Thank you.
I'm so glad. Thanks for making that comment. This was a tough decision for us back in March. We were watching the progress of everything. And do we really need to cancel? We don't want to cancel. What are we going to do? Well, we'll make an online webinar. We have no idea what that's going to look like, but as it's gotten further and we've seen so many of you want to come on because you haven't been able to come on site, we realize we haven't been serving you in the past and we want to in the future. So in the future, we're going to offer online webinar seminars as well as on site. And so thank you for letting us know and for all of you signing up. Oh my gosh, we want to help you get this so you can help yourselves and your families and your community. Yeah.
And Krista says, I feel the same way. I'm so excited about this.
All right.
I want to share a comment from Jill a couple minutes ago talking about tongue diagnosis, where she just said sometimes you can see people's tongues like on the talent shows on TVs and you can learn a lot about them.
Absolutely. Very, very true. And people talking in stores, you know, that you're walking around and seeing people as they're talking at meals or, you know, things that we'll get to do again someday. Or even now, I'm sure you're grocery shopping. So yeah, observe people's tongues and you'll pick up quite a bit.
And lots of other thank you comments for having the online format.
All right. How about other questions?
So, in Ayurveda, we don't tonify people when there is coating on the tongue. First, we will try to make sure there is no toxins in the body and then start tonifying. Is it same in Chinese medicine too?
You know, you're kind of breaking up a little bit, so I didn't quite get your full question. In Ayurveda, what about the tongue?
Oh yeah, so if there is the coating on the tongue is called toxin, that's ama, and
Yes.
when there is a ama on the tongue, then we don't tonify the person. First, we try to get the ama, the toxins out, and then tonify the person. Is it same in Chinese medicine too?
Absolutely. So AMA, which you're going to learn about tomorrow morning. Oh, it's a fabulous topic.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and of course you know it. But so AMA is like excess dampness or phlegm. It's really like phlegm in Chinese medicine. And depending on the extent of it, because again, you can have invisible or visible phlegm, you can have a little bit in one place or more in others. But if you have a lot or a lot of AMA, then you absolutely, like that, that's like excess dampness. You've got too much. You need to eliminate that. It's going to create blockages. And so you have to eliminate that first before you do any building therapies. You've got to dispel it and move things. So yes, it is handled that same way.
Thank you
Liz,
so much.
thank you. And that was Pradnya. Pradnya, am I saying your name correctly? I hope so.
Okay.
Liz
I
asked,
mean, I just started.
we're so glad you're here.
Yes.
Liz asks, what herbs would you recommend for helping retain info and focus when studying?
Well, sticking with Ayurveda, I know KP recommends calamus, a little bit of calamus, because that does help the mind with retaining. Now, I will say in Chinese medicine, the ability to focus, memorize, and retain has to do with the qi and the spleen. And you Western practitioners are probably scratching your heads right now because the spleen in Chinese medicine is completely, well, it's really not as different as you think, but it's different than we think about in Western medicine. So just take my word for it. It has to do with the spleen and spleen qi. And remember, a lot of qi functions are ruled by the spleen. So excessive sitting, which we're all doing right now, excessive studying, too much sweet, all of these things injure the spleen and make our retention more difficult. So spleen qi tonics are really good. Ginseng is one. Elecampane is a potential if you have dampness too. You have to look at the tonified qi herbs and which ones go to the spleen to see what's going to help. But you might also try a little calamus, which opens the mind and dispels phlegm and dampness also to clear that memory.
Hey,
So,
Lesley, can I ask you to actually expand on that? So when we're talking about the spleen and its functions, we talk about the spleen transforming and transporting, right? And the way that I think about it is there's a,
I'm sorry.
I think about a physical aspect of transforming and transporting food and nutrients, you know, sending it through the body, but also a more intangible aspect of transforming and transporting thoughts and ideas.
Yes, yes, exactly. These functions exist, as I said, on a cellular level on out. So it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. It's on all levels they relate. So you can use them metaphorically as well. So, for instance, Nancy in her formulas class to the intermediate talked about one of the major formulas that strengthens spleen energy, Wuzhang Yi Tang, is for sagging. So it has astragalus in there, which not only tonifies qi but raises qi at the same time. And remember, qi holds and it raises. So it's good for prolapse, that formula. It's good for any kind of sagging. That could be sagging in the personality, sagging physically, or organs sagging, all of that. So the same is true. You're tonifying the spleen chi. You're strengthening its ability to hold and retain, which includes also memory. Yeah, great question. Now, we're already leaping into 5 elements and organs, so you're starting to get a picture of what Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are going to bring to you as we put this all together. Other question?
Let's see. Someone asked about a source. Where can you buy good calamus oil?
Jill, Jill,
I would
do you know
try Banyan Botanicals.
Okay, thank you. We make our own. You know, talking about calamus oil, Michael was treating a Down syndrome boy, and when he would put calamus, oil the nose with calamus oil, which is an Ayurvedic technique, his clarity and ability to be coherent really sharpened. It was pretty amazing. So that's a good way you can use it, is in the nose like that. And it was fairly instant. It was, you know, within minutes, if that.
I'll just add that, yes, I've purchased Banyan's calamus oil, and this is Jill. I've purchased Banyan's, and I've also used the one that you and Michael made, Lesley. Banyan's was fine, but the one that you and Michael made was far more powerful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So make your own. And
Yeah.
you're going to learn all about making things in some of your pre-recorded webinars. You've got a calamus oil you're going to make, a calendula oil. So instead, substitute calamus, buy the bulk herb and make it strong. Yeah, great, Jill. Thank you.
And then Liz says that she's in the UK, and do we have recommendations there? I don't know of anything specifically, but I know I would be certain that there are Indian shops where you may be able to get whole calamus.
Yeah, Mayway used to be in that area and accessible in the UK. I don't know if they still are or not. I don't know if Banyan ships internationally, but I know a lot of herbalists. I know of a lot of herbalists, and some well in the UK, in England particularly, and they, I would get hold of some organization there. There's I know there's an organization of herbalists. I can't think of the name right now. Get hold of them and find out where they source bulk herbs or calamus oil or whatever. Yeah, once you start getting into Europe, like Germany, there's a lot more regulations when it comes to herbs. Although you can buy stuff at pharmacies, what we call drugstores, and there are some herbal products available, teas and things like that. I don't know if they'd have calamus oil though.
Okay, so we're at 12:28. We've got a couple minutes left, and I'm seeing a couple more questions. And this one has to do with the forum. Linda wants to know, when you're on the forum and it shows that you're given an herb designation that shows what herb you are, how does that work? How do you know if you're an astragalus member or otherwise?
Bill Unger, can you answer that?
Hello, yes, I can answer that. So years ago when we started that forum, we were given the opportunity to have designations based on how many posts someone did. And it was actually Anne de Courtenay, our editor, who came up with those names, and you automatically move up a category after a certain number of posts. And I don't have exactly the numbers on that, but the more you post, the higher your herb level goes.
I like that.
It's very cool.
So that encourages all of you to post on the forum and answer each other's questions and ask your questions and so forth. Where a lot of graduates interact and students who have been students, like we're all students forever. So yeah, thank you, Jill.
All right, we're at 12:30. There's one more question I'm seeing here from Ray, and I'm going to read it and then just suggest that we continue to talk about it over the next several days.
Okay.
Ray says, I still struggle with differentiating between the similar aspects, deficient yin slash deficient yang slash excessive yin, for example, because there is an overlap in the written descriptions. When you're explaining how to identify, that helps. Is there a resource or mentor type program to continue to learn to identify the particulars of each category? So I think that's kind of involved, and we will definitely continue to work on this throughout the whole course. And yes, there are mentor opportunities.
Well, yeah, and you could speak to that if you want. I'm just going to say, going back to these books, Obi-Wan, the Orange Book 1, the Chinese traditional herbal medicine, there's a whole chapter called differential diagnosis. Thursday, when we get into all the patterns, you will see much more clearly how excess deficient yang, excess deficient yin appear in the body. They are never really described as just deficient yin or excess yang, or deficient yang. Instead, it will be deficient yin of the stomach, deficient yin of the liver, deficient yin of the lungs or the kidneys, or deficient yang of the spleen, or deficient yang of the heart. Will be termed like that. So bringing the organs in is really important. And Thursday and Friday, we're going to get into that, and it will all be cleared up a whole lot more for you that way. Plus, if you look at my Healing with the Herbs of Life, going under the treatment of specific conditions, you can look right there and start comparing and make it clear for yourself. And mentoring.
Okay, and I think that's our time for today. Are there any final notes that we need to let folks know before we sign off?
Yeah. Remember at the very beginning, I said this might seem all like Greek to you, or Chinese. So hang in there. You can do this. It will come to you. It will make sense. We just need to give it more time. We need to fill in some of the gaps you're wanting, like the organs, like the 5 elements, like the patterns. Taking the tongue and pulse webinars, if you can at all fit those in before Thursday morning, that would be really helpful. I also recommend you take your test right away, because the test will reflect back to you how much you really are getting and what area you don't quite have. So it could be helpful for you. Oh, and I do want to say a general thing about the test. Some of you say you're never going to come to intermediate or try to be a practitioner or anything like that. But, none of us really knows what our future holds for us. You might find that you absolutely do really well with this material and love it and want to start using it. So we need your tests back in order to know you have completed this level and can go on to the next one. And in 2 years, you don't want to go back and take these tests. So why not do them now? It takes 10 minutes. They're not hard. And then they're done and over, and really use it as a learning guide for yourself. Whether or not you're going to practice or ever come to a seminar, use these tests as a learning guide to see what you know, and then what you don't know, you'll have the answer for, and you can do more study on. And that only is going to enhance and reinforce your own learning. So I think those were the things I wanted to mention. Yes, those were the things I wanted to mention. So enjoy your lunch break, everybody, and your day. And I hope you get to the webinars. And tomorrow you go into Ayurveda, and Wednesday morning, 5 elements. And then I'll see you on Thursday and Friday.
Okay, Lesley, I know the video recording of this presentation is going to be emailed out. We've had a few requests for you to share your slides. Is that an option?
Oh, to share my slides. Oh, you mean as a handout? Let me think about that.
Okay.
Let me think about that. But regardless, you're going to see them all online. And when you go to the online recording, you can fast forward and back up through it. You don't have to watch the whole thing from beginning to end. There's a scroll bar, and you can pick the screen you want and so forth. So it's real easy to use. And you have through the end of May, which is 5 weeks to almost, if not 5+, to go through all this. And it's in the books. So I'm not sure you even need this as a handout if you want to know the truth. We probably have this up later this afternoon or by tomorrow morning. And you'll have the link. All right.
All right. All right, that's it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Thanks
Lesley.
a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today.
Be well.
Just replying to another comment here before I close.
Okay. I can't exit or get off or anything. My control box is completely stuck. So I have to wait until you exit. Is it a question that I could answer in the future?
Somebody just asked about accessing the forum. Okay, I am going to stop the recording.